Thank you. Welcome to the meeting of the Planning and Regulatory Committee. The agenda, papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing from the Herefordshire Council website. Please remember your words and actions should be chosen carefully, and members are reminded that speeches are limited to 3 minutes. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and also making a recording. The recording will be available via the Council's website shortly after the meeting has concluded. Other attendees are permitted to film, photograph and record the meeting, provided that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If you do not wish to be filmed or photographed, please identify yourself so that anyone who intends to record the meeting can be made aware. Right, there's a lady, one lady. Yes, I think you ought to move to the back row because the camera will take the. All right. Okay. To ensure that the recording quality is maintained, could members speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum, and ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Welcome to all those in attendance. I now ask Ms. Gibbons to introduce the officers for today.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Kelly Gibbons. I'm the Development Management Service Manager. To my right, I have Heather Carlisle, who will be presenting item 6. We'll be joined later by Ollie Jones for item 7 and Chloe Allen Hewitt for item 8. We also have Katie Jones on behalf of the Local Highway Authority, and to my left, Georgina Coley, who's our legal advisor for today. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the main items on the agenda. Apologies for absence. I don't think we've received all present. Full house. And so we have no named substitutes on item 2. Can I ask if anyone wishes to declare an interest? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare my interest. I am flooded by the Yaser Brook, but the Three Elms area doesn't affect my flooding whatsoever. And also, before I became a councillor, I made some comments opposing the scheme on social media. I'd like to declare that my comments today and my approach with this application will not. Sorry, I'll start again. I'd like to say that in the interest, comments made on social media and points and confirm that I'm approaching this application with an open mind. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Thank you. There are no other declarations? None. Then we'll move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of October. Can I indicate those that are in favour that they're an accurate record of that meeting? Please indicate. I think that is. Are there any against? No abstentions? Oh, one abstention. Oh yes, Councillor Simmons. Right. Well, now I have no announcements under my my item 5. I'll now move on to a request that the public speakers take their place at the table in front of us. That's Mr. Milne, Mr. Hull and Ms. Barrett Mondo. Welcome, and I'll call you to speak when the officer has made her presentation. I'll now move on to the first application on our agenda, land at Three Elms North East Quarter to the north east of Huntington and bounded by Three Elms Road and Roman Road, Hereford. Ms. Carlisle.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair, and also a huge thank you to members of the committee who attended the site visit yesterday morning, which I think we all found beneficial. The application has been redirected to Planning Committee by the Ward Councillor, Councillor Williams, due to the number of representations received. Firstly, can I highlight members to the update list, which includes additional representation received following the publication of the committee report, and also clarification from myself as the officer relating to affordable housing provision, and also the addition of Stretton Suggers Church of England Academy for education contributions as part of the draft heads of terms. Thank you. The application site is identified in the usual manner by the red star, and in this instance, due to the size of the application site, 2 stars have been shown, north and south of Huntington Lane. Next slide, please. This slide shows the application site as submitted as outlined in red. This outline application has been with the local planning authority for over 3 years and comprises of a first phase of an urban extension. In addition to the proposed residential development of up to 350 homes, the proposal also includes a care home, use class C2, a park and choose interchange, together with a significant amount of green landscaping, infrastructure, proposed informal and formal open space, and as well as associated drainage and necessary highway works. All matters are reserved except for accesses into the site. This outline application is accompanied by an environmental statement, and this details the environmental effects of the proposal and a suggested mitigation where required. This environmental statement was submitted on a voluntary basis by the applicant, as a formal screening was not sought by the local planning authority. As can be seen from this plan, the southeastern section of the site is bisected by the road known as Huntington Lane from the eastern boundary at Three Elms Road through the hamlet of Huntington to Kings Acre Road to the south. The site abuts Huntington, which has, as well as a number of dwellings, a church, and locationally lies to the south of the Roman Road and to the west of Three Elms Road. The Yaser Brook runs along the site, and there are also public footpaths. The site is mostly in flood zone 1, however, where the Yaser Brook bounds the site to the south, as well as parts of the site adjacent to the brook, are located in zones 2 and 3. Also, the site has been designated a groundwater source protection zone. A small part of the site is within the Huntington Conservation Area, and although there are no listed buildings on the application site, there are 4 within the Huntington itself. Next slide, please. This slide helps with context by showing an aerial plan of the immediate area. The site occupies an area of approximately 24.8 hectares of greenfield land, which is currently in agricultural arable use, located to the west of Hereford City. To the northeast is the Beaches Business Park, and also you can see Whitecross High School is located at the south of the site. As members who were on site yesterday, you can also see the residential estate known as the Paddocks to the north, as well as Bovington Park. Next slide, please. This slide again helps with context, and the diagram on the right is taken from the submitted design and access statement and assists with naming some of the neighbouring roads, as well as showing Bovington Park. As discussed within the committee report, this proposal forms part of the Western Urban Expansion Area, part of the site which is identified for up to 1,000 homes as per the current development plan, Core Strategy Policy HD5. This is a strategic site allocation for housing delivery within the plan period. The plan on the left shows the application master plan for the undecided 2016 application, and however, this application only forms part of the policy allocation, although I stress this proposal is a standalone submission and is not reliant on the pending 2016 application. As detailed within the committee report, the principle of housing delivery at this site is accepted, as the site is located in a sustainable location as per the NPPF paragraphs 61 to 71. And even though it is the first phase of development, it is not fully compliant with the aforementioned policy HD5. Hereford is located as a focus for sustainable housing growth and plays an important part in meeting the target housing growth for the city and county. Also, this proposal is in line with policy HD5, which states within its appendixes that up to 580 dwellings can be delivered as a Phase 1 development ahead of the Hereford bypass as part of an allocated site. Next slide, please. As part of the submission, a number of parameter plans have been submitted, and I will now run through some of the key parameter plans. This slide shows the proposed siting and maximum footprint of the development, and this has been influenced by existing site constraints, including topography, the presence of existing trees and hedgerows within and along the boundaries of the site, and all the potential for views of the development from a range of locations. The light yellow is residential and open space in light green, as well as the park and choose at the north of the site in purple. The predominant land use is for residential. The predominant land uses are for residential, a park and choose, and land will be set aside for a care home. I stress residential development is not proposed within the flood zones. Next slide, please. This is the green parameters plan. With respect to trees, policy LD1 requires development to maintain and extend tree cover where important to amenity through the retention of important trees, appropriate replacement of trees lost through development, and new planting to support green infrastructure. Specifically in relation to green infrastructure, policy LD3 states that development should protect, manage and plan for the preservation of existing and delivery of new green infrastructure. For existing green infrastructure, this includes the protection of hedgerows. Green space as part of this development is set out in the parameters plan to visually and physically assimilate the development into the existing context. Open space is shown on this plan in green, and play areas, albeit indicative, are shown by the pinky coloured stars. Another key feature is the enhanced buffer zones. As you will see, landscape buffers next to Bovington Park, and the green areas also include flood storage and open space along the Yaser Brook to create a linear green corridor. An open space buffer is also shown around Huntington, and this is to respect the setting and to respect its setting, and a linear buffer is proposed along Three Elms. Also, a number of existing trees and hedgerows will be retained. The proposal has been accompanied by a detailed LVIA, and any landscape concerns can be addressed at the reserve matters stage detailed design. However, members are reminded that the landscape officer has not objected to the proposal. As such, after considerable analysis of the submission, including extensive review of the LVIA, the visual impacts of this scheme are not deemed significant. Future reserve matters will ensure landscape considerations are taken into account for the scheme, and as this is an outline stage, the landscape is considered acceptable. Next slide, please. This is a submitted parameters plan in regards to building heights and shows the proposed maximum building heights for the development. Similar as with land use, the building heights have been strongly influenced by existing site constraints, including topography and the relationship with the existing built environment. It is proposed to walk broadly within the existing topography of the site with no significant cut or fill. The residential development would comprise of a mixture of 2 to 3 storey buildings, and the majority of the residential buildings on the site will be up to 2 storeys. However, I stress that the potential implication of storey heights will be evaluated at future reserve matter stage. Next slide, please. This is the illustrative framework plan, and when you look at the parameters plans together, they come together to form this illustrative master plan as shown here. This is explored in more detail in the submitted design and access statement, which supports the proposal. Next slide, please. This is the final parameters plan in the form of accesses, which leads onto discussions relating to access and highways. The proposed access points and the main internal vehicle circulation routes associated with the development are shown on this plan. This plan again shows the proposed location of the park and choose as well as the public rights of way. The site will be accessed from 2 new vehicular access points, one along Roman Road to the north and one to the south along Three Elms Road. The internal road layout would be secured in any future reserve matters application. As discussed yesterday on site, a section of Huntington Lane within the site boundary is proposed to be a green lane, in essence restricting vehicles, albeit this is not under consideration within this application. The Park and Choose car park located at the northern edge of the site adjacent to Roman Road detail would also be secured at part of any reserved matters applications. Next slide, please. This slide assists members who are not familiar with the area by showing the local road network highlighting both Roman Road, Three Elms Road and Kingsacre Road. Next slide, please. As referenced earlier, this outline proposal is securing access. This slide shows one of the new main vehicle access points to the residential areas, the development and the Park and Choose to the north. This is off Roman Road. Next slide, please. This plan shows the second main new vehicle access point to the residential areas from Three Elms Road. This is now in the form of a 4-arm mini roundabout. The addition of this mini roundabout now creates a deliverable scheme focusing on safe, active travel provision and has evolved following extensive discussions with the local highway authority and the applicant, as the initial junction was considered substandard for pedestrian cycle desire lines and did not fully meet with the sustainable travel hierarchy. As members will be aware, both national and local policy aims to reduce car dependency as well as promoting walking, cycling and public transport, and this has been a key consideration, and your officers have secured improvements to the original submission in this regard. As discussed yesterday on site, there is also proposed a new signal-controlled toucan crossing adjacent to the proposed mini roundabout, providing safe, active travel links as well as wider improvements to promote active travel measures along Grandstad Road towards Widemarsh Common and Hereford City, again ensuring safe, continuous pedestrian and cycle access. The detailed designs of these works will be secured through Section 278 process, and the schemes have undergone an independent Stage 1 road safety audit agreed by the local highway authority. Members will also note the local highway authority do not object to this application. Next slide, please. This slide shows the 4 public rights of way which cross the site, shown by the dotted pink lines. These would be incorporated into any future reserve matters applications. Next slide, please. Here are a list of the key considerations which have been addressed within the officer report, and these key issues have been addressed to the satisfaction of key consultees. Next slide, please. With respect to flood risk, the majority of the site is located within flood zone 1, low risk. The site is divided by the Yaser Brook, which crosses the site from the northwest corner towards Three Elms Road to the east. The land immediately to the south and north of the brook is identified as flood zone 3, high risk, and flood zone 2, which is medium risk. As discussed yesterday and referenced earlier, no residential development will be located within flood zones 2 or 3. Residential development will be solely within flood zone 1. Open space and green infrastructure will be in the flood zones 2 and 3. This slide shows the EA flood mapping. Officers are very aware, both from representation received from local parishes and local residents, drainage is a concern. Drainage and floodwater management has been a key consideration for this application. The application has been supported by technical flood risk assessment and supplementary drainage reports, as well as details on drainage strategy and modelling.
Can I, if I hear one more, I'll ask for you to be removed from the building. You do not interfere in what is a quasi-judicial process. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Revisions and updates have been provided during the application period. You will note that the Environment Agency, a statutory consultee whose primary role is to protect and improve the environment and managing flood risk, have not objected to the proposal, nor has the Council's drainage officer, who has not objected to the principle of the application as long as suitable mitigation is is addressed by the insertion of bespoke conditions and provisions made for drainage features which will alleviate concerns about surface water flooding. This mitigation includes the raising of property thresholds and areas of concerns, and again this can be addressed at reserve matter stage. Also, and this also includes, for example, the proposed development south of Huntington Lane, which needs to consider the ongoing risk of surface water spilling from Three Elms Road to the Yaser Brook, as well as a provision needs to be made in the master plan for a drainage feature that may intercept runoff from the industrial estate. Again, this is deemed to be considered at reserve matter stage. I also draw your attention to the Welsh Water have also not objected. Next slide, please. This slide shows data informing the submission relating to surface water flooding, both for present day and climate change event. Officers within the committee report have also referenced that the sequential test is not required on the basis of NPPF paragraph 18180. The 2020 flood risk assessment relates to the council's local plan supporting evidence, and this is not site-specific FRA, and as such this application does not require a sequential test on the basis of paragraph 180. Next slide, please. Concerns have been raised around water in the aquifer and that the development could compromise the purity of water. And this application also assesses the impact of the development on water quality. Officers acknowledge that a tailored approach to address unacceptable risks, including that of water environment and the water supply borehole receptors, should be carried out in the form of submission of site investigation reports to be submitted and identifying remedial works and mitigation methods. Within paragraph 9.193 of the committee report, there is a reference to a borehole condition to address the private water supply. However, your officers are aware within the suite of conditions at the end of the report, this bespoke condition has been missed off. However, your officers will ensure this is included, and please can I draw attention to the proposed wording on the slide relating to this matter. Also, officers have secured via the Section 106 an information pack to residents explaining how the open space will be managed and the appropriate use of household chemicals and fertilisers due to the importance of this underlying aquifer. Finally, can I draw your attention to the correspondence received overnight from Heineken's legal team in which they have confirmed their withdrawal of their objection relating to water supply. Next slide, please. This slide is in regards to the proximity of the conservation area and the listed buildings, and this is covered in more detail within the committee report within Heritage Matters. The listed buildings are shown by the blue marker on the plan. You will also note that Historic England have not objected, nor the Archaeological Advisor, nor the Historic Buildings Officer. With respect to heritage, appropriate mitigation measures are proposed to minimise the impact of the development on the setting of the conservation area and listed buildings, as well as any buried archaeology. Officers acknowledge that the proposed development would cause less than substantial harm to the heritage features. And it is considered that this harm and any other harm are outweighed by the public benefits the proposal would deliver, including house supply as detailed within the committee report. Next slide, please. This slide is to clarify that the proposal included within the submission the following ecological supporting information as listed on the screen. Also, members will note that the proposal has raised no objection from ecological officers nor Natural England. Also, the site has the potential to result in 29% net gain in biodiversity, although the application is caught by the statutory requirement due to the time it was submitted, but as advised, this site does provide extensive biodiversity net gain. Also, I can confirm that the HRA as submitted is deemed to be acceptable. Next slide, please. The photos in the next couple of slides are to assist members who did not attend the site visit yesterday and show the immediate context showing the site as arable, undeveloped land. Next slide. Next slide, please. This shows Bovington Park, the mobile home park to the north, and the new residential development known as the Paddocks off Roman Road, as well as Beaches Business Park to the north and as well as showing the existing rural nature of Huntington Lane. Next slide, please. A Section 106 agreement is required to secure the necessary planning contributions generated through the scheme and the delivery of affordable housing. The agreement has progressed significantly between the applicant and the council, and a draft heads of terms as detailed within this committee report will form the basis of a legal agreement. Next slide, please. Details relating to scale, layout, appearance and landscaping would be provided for approval at the next stage, reserve matter stage, and I stress are not under consideration with this application. Next slide, please. As discussed yesterday on site, your officers have worked extensively with consultees and statutory consultees to secure improvements and changes during the assessment of this application, to enable this application to be brought in front of you this morning with a favourable recommendation. Whilst in an ideal world, this strategic allocation would be presented to you in its entirety, but this is not the case. However, this application plays a significant role in delivery of part of the allocated site known as 3 Elms Strategic Allocation Policy HD5 within the current core strategy, and the principle of development and the delivery this site will give delivering this site will give substantial benefits, including addressing the need for housing, including affordable housing, within the allocated plan period up to 2031 by providing up to 350 homes on part of an allocated site. Also generating economic benefits through on-site employment during the construction phases, and also providing infrastructure for the wider allocation as well as a park and choose. In environmental terms, the scheme offers the ability to mitigate flooding locally and also offers improved access to public transport and opportunities for cycling and walking for prospective inhabitants as well as the wider population. However, it is not surprising that a development proposal of this scale raises various issues and concerns, leading to potential tensions and conflicts with other policy interests. Consequently, a considerable amount of time has been invested in reviewing, assessing and refining the submission documents to understand and shape the necessary mitigation strategies. These strategies are intended to ensure that the new homes and other components of this development proposal are capable of being sustainable. To make the development acceptable and enhance the quality of the proposal, as well as enabling the development, planning conditions have been applied to mitigate any adverse effects, and these are included at the end of the report. Overall, as set out in the committee report, officers conclude that the adverse impacts of granting planning permission do not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of this allocated site, and no grounds for refusal have been identified and therefore accord with the policies of the NPPF taken as a whole. It is not considered that the application of policies in the NPPF that protect areas or assets of particular importance provide a strong reason for refusing the development proposed. The recommendation is set out on the screen. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to members of this committee.
Thank you, Ms. Kalal. I'll now move on to invite the speakers. Can I invite Mr. Milne to speak on behalf of Hereford City Council? He has 3 minutes.
Hereford City Council, on behalf of local residents, objects. This is an unsuitable form of development for this site. The benefits of the scheme do not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the identified harms as the NPPF requires. 350 houses here sets the agenda for suburban sprawl to the west of Hereford, potentially of 10,000 houses. We must get it right. Drainage and the underlying commercial aquifer, given the history of flooding here and the vital importance of the water source to Hereford's major employers, are crucial. These matters should not be reserved for determination away from scrutiny, nor should ecology, landscape layout, scale, appearance, heritage and contamination. Rather, we are offered a long wish list of conditions. Yet NPPF paragraph 57 states that conditions be kept to a minimum and pre-commencement conditions are avoided. Conditions should not be used to cover for inadequate supporting documentation. The only detail offered in the proposed scheme relates to access and active travel measures, the latter an attempt to pass off the scheme's car-centric form. However, the proposed ATMs, with their unprotected crossings and shared two-way routes against busy roads as little as 2 metres wide, are substandard and fail LTN 120, the Department of Transport's requirement for such infrastructure. They would not be considered a viable alternative to driving for most people and therefore also fail policies SS4 and MT1 for sustainable travel. Key issues are flooding and the impact of development on the aquifer on which a great many jobs depend. Yeazer flooding of the hamlet is abundantly evidenced as it is, never mind with the addition of runoff from roofs and roads and roofs are built across higher land. In your updates, the summary from the Chartered Engineer draws attention to the missing data on flood risk. The groundwater flows from the Elsbrook and the new development to the north are not appropriately assessed. So far as the commercial aquifer is concerned, he reminds us that there is no independent analysis of risk to the source protection zones. These are serious matters. Members have a responsibility here which should not be abrogated to reserved matters. City Council takes the view the application fails to demonstrate it meets the required threshold for sustainable design and therefore fails policy SD1. At 14 units per hectare, the density fails to demonstrate efficient use of land, falling below the 35 units per hectare figure given in policy HD5. This is land graded best and most versatile. Its loss, therefore, contrary to NPPF paragraph 174. The failure to demonstrate sustainable management of water resources is in conflict with policy SD3. The application lacks evidence it meets the required criteria for resilience, energy and carbon efficiency required of policy SS7, and the harms to heritage of the conservation are in conflict with policy LD4. Refusal is recommended on the grounds that, taken together, the identified harms are not outweighed by benefits without clear and agreed mitigation. Failing refusal, we would urge deferment while the required mitigation pathways, chiefly for flooding and the aquifer, are sought.
Thank you. And now I'll ask Mr. Howell to speak in objection. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to draw the attention of the Planning Committee members to what they are being presented with and the implications of what they are being asked to approve. This considering the risk of serious flooding and the potential loss of over 3,000 jobs in Hereford. This application is described as an outline planning application with all matters reserved except access. With respect, I would ask what the role of the Planning Committee is, if, as the Planning Officer states in paragraph 9.226, that material considerations of nearly all planning matters can be addressed by reserved matters or section 106. I would ask what the role of this Planning Committee is if you do not need to consider major design issues relating to potential flooding and contamination of critical potable water supplies. Do the Planning Committee members feel comfortable leaving very important reserved matters to be determined by planning officers without further committee scrutiny? Recent evidence of severe flooding at Tow Tree Lane, Cannon Pine and other new development sites would indicate that there is a track record of failure to protect existing residences, businesses and highways from new developments. The Three Elms site already experiences significant flooding, including access routes as shown in photographs submitted but omitted from the Planning Officer's report. I would also like to ask whether Planning Committee members feel confident in delegating the maintenance of critical surface drainage infrastructure to third parties, as mentioned in paragraph 7.25 of the Planning Report. The implications of this on the risks of aquifer contamination and flooding are pronounced. In conclusion, the protection of the proposed housing in this application and those of existing residents of Hereford, along with over 3,000 jobs, depends on your decision today. This development is the first stage of a proposed major urban expansion of the city to the west of Hereford. If the committee do not feel they can refuse this application, I would recommend that this planning application is deferred until such time as the necessary information, particularly the modelling of the source protection zones, the drainage, water flows and detailed geophysical site survey have been completed. This would then enable councillors to properly scrutinise the development of this strategic site. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I now ask Ms. Barrett Madhu make a presentation on behalf of the applicant? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair and Councillors. I am Victoria Barrett Madhu from the Church Commissioners for England, the applicant for this outline planning application. A key objective of the Commissioner's Strategic Land Team is to create places that build new and strengthen existing communities. We are delighted that this scheme is before you for your consideration with a recommendation for approval, after several years working with your planning and technical officers. It forms a first phase of the wider Three Elms adopted allocation to support growth in Herefordshire in line with the Council's strategy. The scheme being considered today will deliver 350 much-needed homes, including affordable homes, land for a new affordable care home, and a dedicated affordable 6-bedroom home specifically requested by the housing team. A financial contribution of almost £2 million has been agreed to fund a substantial package of sustainable transport measures to deliver off-site active travel improvements along Grandstand Road, and a new park and choose facility will also be delivered on site, both of which will benefit the new residents and existing communities in terms of non-car travel towards Hereford City Centre. Over 45% of the site will be retained as open space, with all new homes within a 5-minute walk of public open space. Considerable work has taken place to address the concerns raised by consultees in relation to the potential for the site to flood. The scheme is accompanied by a comprehensive flood risk assessment and drainage strategy, which includes additional floodplain storage, which will provide a betterment over the existing situation in line with the allocation policy. Our environmental, social and governance commitments are important to us as long-term stewards of the land, and we will actively work with our delivery partner on this project to embed these in the scheme and deliver the benefits committed to. The Commissioners is also committed to bringing forward the wider allocation at the appropriate time, which will complement this first phase application and deliver further infrastructure and benefits. We're proud of the application that you have before you and the contribution it can make to delivering Herefordshire's growth strategy. We're pleased to note that consultees, including the Local Highway Authority, Environment Agency, Lead Local Flood Authority and officers at Herefordshire Council, are satisfied with the details set out within the application, as covered in the case officer's report and presentation. We welcome the officer's recommendation for approval, concluding that the development accords with the local plan, site allocation policy and the NPPF taken as a whole. We therefore respectfully request that you support this application in accordance with your officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. If now the public speakers can take their place back in the public gallery, please. Let's clarify this on the reserve matter, the fact that it's coming back. Can I say, I think there's slightly misunderstanding. This will not go ahead per se as it is. This is outline planning permission, and the details of the planning permission will ultimately, I assume, come back to the committee for deciding. Right, we'll now move on to we have a local member. Councillor Williams is the local member for this item. He is unable to attend and has submitted a statement to be read at the meeting. You have 10 minutes.
Statement to be read on behalf of Councillor Williams, ward member for the application. Firstly, I'm sorry that I can't be here in person today for personal reasons. Secondly, I would like to thank all members and staff that came out yesterday in the cold to the site visit for this application. This application has been an interesting one. Whilst it addresses the city and county's need for more housing, I can't support the application on several issues that have been represented to me by residents and my own personal view as well. Number one, flooding. This is an issue that the proposed site has. There have been many times recently and historically that see the fields covered in water through flooding or collection of water that won't clear over a long period. Whilst I'm not a specialist in soil structure, I believe the soil is quite a heavy clay type, meaning drainage isn't the best. We must look at the Yaser Brook that runs adjacent to the site and look at the flooding that happens further down the brook in the park areas adjacent to Yaser Road. We must also account for the worries that I have from residents who live near to the floodable green in roads such as Vilbury Way, Chisel Close, Derwent Drive and Sydney Box Drive, to name a few. When flooding occurs, residents begin to worry when the water levels get near to their properties. Will we end up with similar issues if this application goes ahead? I suspect so. There are pictures that have been submitted with this application of flooding. However, I'm personally bombarded by email and social media phone calls from residents with additional flooding photos every time there is a flooding event. 2. Traffic and the Three Elms Road. This road, when at peak times, already gets backed up along from the Monument roundabout, and recently I have seen it usually back up as far as the Range shop. Whilst we have seen the reports from the highways suggesting that it will be okay, practically with another up to 700 cars, open brackets, based on average of 2 cars per household, which is average in modern times, close brackets, using the Three Elms Road as a commuting road to work, go shopping, visiting family, etc., this will unquestionably lead to more traffic pressure on what is already a busy arterial road into the city. This is also a worry with the Whitecross High Secondary School feeding directly onto the Three Elms Road with a pedestrian crossing as well. Will this lead to an accident, including a school child? Whilst I hope not, with all of the additional traffic, this will increase the risk factor. Let's also not forget Trinity Primary School as well, off Moor Farm Lane, Barracombe Drive, again feeding into Three Elms Road. The primary school has already had to have additional safety measures put into place around pick-up and drop-off parking restrictions because of pupil safety. If there is additional traffic on the Three Elms Road, this will increase the number of cars awaiting to exit onto the main road. Personally, living in a close that feeds onto the Three Elms Road, I have real-life experience of this and can foresee the above regrettably ending up with a school-aged child being involved in an accident, which no one would ever want to see happen. Number 3, local services. With local amenities, with GPs, dentists, school places, etc. already at capacity, is there capacity for more people on an already stretched system? 4. Loss of prime arable land. As a county that prides itself on our food production, how can losing more and more farming land be right? 5. Walking. As we are all aware, the proposed site has got public rights of way that run through it. If you walk around the area at the weekends and evening times, you would become aware of the amount of local people that use this footpath for walking and dog walking. Whilst the plan keeps a maintained area with greenery, bushes and trees in a strip through it, there isn't anything better than walking through open countryside, walking your dog and or with family and friends. This will never be the same again if it's replaced with the strip through the houses. This will have a negative effect on mental health if it's not as easy to access open countryside on their doorstep. 6. Pollution. To be fair, this point is really tied into traffic, really, I guess, but with the additional traffic, what about all of the extra fumes from the cars that will inevitably be waiting in traffic queues? Let's not forget the local schools and residents already mentioned. 7. Loss of natural agricultural habitat. Whilst the application attempts to mitigate the loss of hedgerow and impacts on nature, what will the impact of the proposed plan be for nature? How will this affect the local ecosystem? Again, this will all be lost. Whilst I appreciate that the above has all been modelled and tested by the relevant stakeholders, consulted bodies, organisations and council officers and specialists, I please ask councillors to reflect on the local lived experience within the ward. Think of the irreversible impact that this development will have on its residents now and forever moving forwards. Also, please bear in mind that this is setting a precedent to future house building in the west of the city, which I think could eventually, in time, come to see Credon Hill become a suburb of Hereford like Tupsley, which I find a scary but realistic probability in 15 to 30 years if this application is awarded today. I sign this off today, not as myself, but the Kingsacre Ward member and ultimately the City of Hereford. Thank you everyone for your time to listen to this.
Thank. We now, Councillor Crockett is the adjoining local ward member for this item. She is unable to attend, but has submitted also a statement. Mr. Evans.
Statement on behalf of Councillor Crockett, adjoining ward member to the application. Apologies for not being able to join this meeting today. As the adjacent ward member, I represent residents in the parishes of Berghill and Tillington. The following concerns and comments relate to the planning application 222138 in regard to access to the outline planning application. At peak times, traffic is often backed up along three main arteries into Hereford cities. These are Cannon Pine Road, Roman Road and Three Elms Road. These all join together at the Roman Road A4103, Three Elms and Cannon Pine Road traffic lights. It would seem, therefore, that any vehicle leaving the proposed development at such times would have difficulty joining or crossing the flow of traffic along both Roman Road and Three Elms Road. The old Tillington Slip Road is already used as a rat run, which causes more build-up on the Roman Road. This concern has been raised to the applicant and Herefordshire Council Highways Department in the past, and it appears that this has not been considered. The suggested access onto Roman Road currently falls within a 60 mph zone, which would seem rather dangerous. Roman Road is unfortunately a road that is subject to excessive speeding. Any speed data stats would be helpful to confirm or deny this. I am sure this is buried in the documents somewhere. Whilst lower speed limits could be introduced, unless these are actively and regularly policed, this would have little effect, I fear. I have received numerous complaints from residents who have noticed a marked increase in the speeds being driven along the Roman Road. It is also noted that the proposed access for Roman Road is situated not far from and opposite the children's play area created on the Tillington Road Connexus development. Is it wise to have so many junctions in such a small vicinity where children are likely to be? Traffic calming measures could be introduced but would inevitably increase traffic noise in the area through braking and accelerating. This already extremely busy route produces a constant traffic drone in the area without introducing obstacles, so this may not be the best option. I would again ask that the applicant discusses with Herefordshire Council the possibility of making the old Tillington Road from the south, in brackets Three Elms Inn Junction, one way. At least this would stop the build-up on the Roman Road in peak times. So ends.
Thank you. And now I invite the debate. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I first of all commend our planning officer, Heather Carlyle, for her very comprehensive report and for looking after us yesterday during our extremely cold site visit, and for her presentation this morning. When I was first elected to Herefordshire Council 10 years ago, I remember seeing plans for 1,300, I think it was, properties along on this site. And so to see now that it's been reduced to an indicative 350 on an outline permission, it gives me hope for the future. And this will mean that there's an opportunity for developers and the planners to produce designs that will complement the expansion of the city. And all cities must expand if we are to grow with future challenges and to thrive. Otherwise, we will, it won't work. And with a number of new people coming into the city, we've got to house them. And so it's a logical place to put them on this particular site. And I know it upsets a lot of people, but we'll be looking again in the future at the reserved matters. We are being asked today to agree the access. There's 2 access points, but I think, as was mentioned by Councillor Crockett in her report, the Roman Road junction, I think, needs looking at. I think if you were to come out of the site, it'd be impossible during peak hour to turn right onto the Roman Road. But that's again is something that we can look at under the reserved matters. And so at this stage, I'm happy to support the recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Just one bit of clarification. It wasn't 1,300 on this particular site. It was part of a much larger site. Oh, yeah. Right. Councillor Woodall. Sorry. Clarification.
Just one point on that. So in terms of the access, you are considering the access. That's the one bit you are considering on the Roman Road access. So the detailed plans of that access do form a part of this application.
Apologies, I thought we were just considering the principle of
The
an access point.
the principle and the access details for the actual access into the site have been provided. So the access onto Roman Road and the access onto Three Elms Road, those details have been provided. The actual technical details will be approved through the 278 process, but the layout and how that would operate is before you now for those.
That's
Right,
difficult.
right.
I'll give that some thought while the debate continues.
Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a hugely complex application. Besides there being 1,001 different issues relating to a development of this size, there is a fundamental issue which has not really been resolved, as I can see from the documentation, and cannot be mitigated against in reserved matters. And that's the fundamental question: is it safe to build on that land, or at least one of the parcels of that land? Could I ask if you could put up the map, the contours map that is shown? It's actually on page 171 of our big list of documentation, and it's the building heights parameters plan, which shows the contours. If you could pull that one up, I'd be grateful. It'll help to illustrate. So yesterday after the site visit, and thank you very much to the case officer for taking us around there, I went for a walk along the southern footpath across the top of Huntington, and you can see from the contours there, it is quite a slope from the houses on Plough Estate and down to Huntington. The other parcel of land, which is nearest to Three Elms, is a lot flatter, and we saw that. But my concern is with that sloped area. It is thick clay, as was said before, and down towards the Yaser Brook, I actually got a stick, and you can push it all the way through. It's like plasticine or custard, and you can push it all the way through. Even though infiltration rates are poor, it is soft and it is sort of movable. It probably cracks very easily. A Deventian clay till, which is this, dries and cracks and shrinks, and it expands and slides when it's soaked. Underneath that is underground water, aquifers, as we know. There's evidence of some kind of river flow underneath. There was a survey by GSB, Geophysical Survey. It was actually magnetometer survey. So it was looking more about the ferrous content of the land, and it shows some streams running underneath that sloped part where you can see those severe contours. Those are 0.5 meter contours in between. So they've put some houses at the top, the Plough Estate, and you've got the static cabins at the top there as well. Those are not on the slope, they're on the top. So imagine a trifle, which is covered with custard, and these houses, the existing ones, are on the top. And the idea is to build a whole bunch of houses, maybe half of the amount of houses, it's indicative, the plan, on the side of that slope. And obviously they're going to have to shift an awful lot of material to level it out. And they're going to be moving a lot of clay out of there. They're going to have to reveal. I just don't see how that is a practical area for construction. I totally agree with perversely with the southern parcel, which is up against the Three Elms Road, but not that parcel of land above Huntington and on that slope. And we've also been told that, which is weird, in condition 19, prior to commencement of any development in each phase, a geophysical survey to determine the presence and thickness of glacial till to that phase shall be undertaken to inform the design of basically everything. So how, as one of the speakers said, can we approve a planning condition to mitigate adverse effects if the geological survey has not been done? We have inadequate information to approve this, and surely it's something that has to be done.
3 minutes.
Thank you. One more point. New housing bonus is no longer effective. So the item claimed in 9.224 about the economic benefit is void. Thank you very much.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Please bear with me. I am a bit new to doing this and I'm a little bit confused. So are we actually looking at just outline planning today?
Yeah.
And just looking at the actual access?
Outline
We're not looking
planning
at
and
anything.
the access.
And the access, that's it.
Yeah.
Just to say, this is where we can actually put these houses. Are we looking at whether it's actually safe to put these houses here?
The detail of the positioning of the other than not in the floodplain.
Okay.
That will follow at a further application.
Okay. So could I suggest then So I am getting conflicting sort of information here. I'm getting a little bit confused. I am sorry, but could I say that I really do have real serious concerns about this application. The sheer number of objections with this application. I understand this is mainly about the flooding and this is about the aquifer, but you're saying today that we're not actually looking at that, correct?
I'll hand it over to Ms. Gibbons.
Okay, let's clarify. So this application's made an outline. So we're looking at is the principle of development acceptable on this site? We are looking at what the constraints are. So you've got a really detailed report in front of you that identifies all the constraints of how this site might be delivered. You have also got the details of how this site would be accessed at the 2 points on Roman Road and on Three Elms Road. So what you're not looking at is the detail. So we have had to consider all of those technical constraints that you're talking about. So we have had to look at are we satisfied in principle that the drainage rate, the site can be mitigated with drainage and with flood and for ecology and for all of the other issues that we've talked about. They've all been considered very closely by those technical consultees. There are aspects, as as this site comes forward, as part of that Reserve Matters application, the people that will be making that Reserve Matters application will need to go away and do a lot more work into all of these other technical points to make sure that that layout and that those site levels and how it's going to be constructed and how it's going to be brought forward, they all need to be considered at that next stage. They're not before us right now. They have to be reasonably satisfied that they're going to bring that forward, but the next application will need to demonstrate or need to look at those issues as well. So they are, yes, you're looking at the principle. Is the siting of this site, this application site on the west of the city, adjacent to those services and the shops and the access and all of the, are we satisfied with the siting, so the location of the site and the principle of development? But it's just to reassure you, I suppose, that yes, you are looking at all those technical details. That's what's before you. That's what's in the report and within the really detailed environmental statement. But there are subsequent there is subsequent work to do that will inform that reserve matters application to make sure that that site can be brought forward, and the conditions that are recommended for you in this report are how we control that going forward. Now, just to clarify the point as well, so reserve matters applications that come after this, there can be a request in the normal way to bring those applications to committee for scrutiny.
Can I request that?
Not as part of this application. So when those applications come in, they may not be for, years.
So I'm confused again. So you're asking us to make a decision on this application, on the outline application.
So
but not, but all these reserve matters might not actually come back to us.
There is a process to bring them back to committee that would need to go through. So the ward councillor can request for them to come back. But for an application, so the planning application legislation allows people to submit an outline application.
Yes.
And then the reserve matters, the two together make the planning permission.
Understand that.
So so we will, if and when a reserve matters forward application comes forward following the grant of an outline planning permission, then the ward councillor at that time or an adjoining ward councillor can make a request for the application to come to me.
It can't automatically come back to us. We can't automatically request that right now because you're asking us to make a decision right now for this outline planning. Sorry, you're asking us to make a decision on this outline planning right now.
Just one thing, the criteria are set out, as you know, for that. One is public concern.
Yes.
And the scale of the application. So, it would be almost impossible that it wouldn't come back.
This is why I'm asking to make sure that it does come back. This is what I'm specifically asking. I have grave concerns about this application.
Yep.
And I don't know how I can make a decision, with all these objections on this right now, without the reserve matters coming back.
So just to clarify that point, I'm not saying it wouldn't come back. I'm saying that we have to, that is bound by the Constitution at the time, or whatever that may be in place at that point. So we have to deal with that at that next stage. It would be very wrong for me to sit here and say it can definitely come back, because the Constitution or the scheme of delegation nationally may change. So we need to just say that there is an opportunity at the moment as it stands for it to be requested back. But you are being asked, yes, you are being asked to make an application on an outline planning application. If we had all the details, it would be a full application. It isn't. It's an outline application. So we're asking you to make a decision on the basis of the recommendation before you, on the principle of development, taking into account all the environmental impacts, all the details that have been provided to you, and that outline including access. The other matters for reserved, the other reserve matters will come later. Plus, you will see there's a suite of conditions which require additional information on top of some of those normal reserve matters.
So the power here and the decisions, for the actual nitty gritty of this at the moment, is nothing to do with this application at all.
Can I just say, from a political point of view, that it is almost impossible that this wouldn't come back because of the degree of concern that a local member, and there are more than one local adjoining members, there was 3 or 4, that this wouldn't be brought back because of the scale of concern for the detailed planning application.
But there's no guarantee of that. And also, we don't know the timescale when this could come back. None of us might be here then.
No.
And somebody else is going to inherit this.
It might not happen.
It might not happen.
I've sat on planning applications, outline planning applications that were 20 years ago and haven't happened yet. So, anyway, our legal representative.
I just want to clarify that, as colleague Kelly Gibbons has already stated, it's an outline planning application which are permitted in planning law and governed by legislation, and so it is perfectly acceptable for these matters to be reserved by condition, to be looked at in detail at a later stage. That's the whole purpose of an outline application. We can't guarantee who will be on committee when these matters come back. We can't guarantee the matter will come back to committee. All we can say is at the moment the Constitution permits that, but you are being asked to look at the outline application, which is a process that is permitted by planning law and which is before the committee today.
Thank you for explaining that to me.
I
Appreciated.
what the options are. We approve it, outline. Mind you, I think there are matters to be debated about the access, especially on Roman Road, and I think that we might be able to do something there, perhaps, or we refuse it, and nothing happens. But most likely it will go to appeal in the inspector. And bearing in mind the government attitude at the moment, I mean that's more or less likely to happen. Go to appeal.
I don't think that actually I understand with regards to appeal, but it just feels sometimes that this is held over us constantly, that any decisions that we could take or should take that actually will go to appeal and mean nothing. I think that's a real concern in itself.
Yes, well, it's going to be a greater concern in the current climate, I'm afraid. But, that was always happened, I'm afraid, whenever we debated outline planning permission. Anyway, Councillor Sim.
Thank you, Chair. As we can see, this outline application causes a real challenge to the committee. We get the agenda pack and sight of what's coming to committee 5 working days before the committee. So I think hopefully people can understand why some members are struggling with this. There's a huge amount of data, and it has taken me, 5-6 days of going through this till late in the night to try and get to grips with it. I am incredibly grateful to Heather Carlisle for her excellent summation of some really complex issues and distilling that huge amount of information to get to her recommendation. I mean, I've read all the objections on the planning portal, and obviously those that have submitted in the last day, and we've heard from applicants and objectors in the room today as well, and it does have some really passionate feelings about this. But in a plan-led system, and that is what we have, a plan-led system, this location has been identified as being suitable for the development, residential development. What we're being asked today is the parameters and access, so the potential land uses on the site, the quantum in terms of the maximum amount of housing and access, is that acceptable to us? Now, we are seeing that there is a huge amount of data and information that helps us to make that decision that we do not have until reserve matters stage. Now, it's really important that we understand what our professionals are telling us. So there has been, and I've gone through as much as I could, particularly in relation to transport and access, of the conversations and to and fro between highways and the developers, the applicants' consultants. And, there's like 8 iterations of conversations and tables where highways have gone back to dig their heels in and push for better access arrangements. Given the quantum that is being proposed for this development, I think they have done as much as they can possibly do to get better access for particularly active travel. There are massive problems with Grandstand Road. I am not content that that is a particularly brilliant cycle route for people, particularly who are not confident. But, I welcome the reduction to 20 mile an hour proposed on there. I would like to see it across Hereford. I would also like to see much more being done by this council and administration with regard to active travel measures that would reduce the desire to travel by car or the need to travel by car. I cannot see the bypass coming forward any time in our lifetimes, quite frankly, because there's no funding for it. So we are not going to see the ability to extend this site further because we are at the maximum constraint. They have set up to 500 and whatever houses could come forward in advance of any bypass, and that's what our network could cope with. But we can see from the traffic modelling that Whitecross Road, particularly Wordsworth Road and down to that Whitecross roundabout, is over capacity. So already highways have managed to get it down to maximum 350 houses plus the care home, putting in a suite of measures to try and encourage active travel, but the development cannot do that on its own. We as members and the council need to do more to try and get people not to be driving. And we need to deliver ways of doing that in town. Now, that's a political issue. I cannot see, with no objection from Natural England, no objection from the EA, no objection from our ecologists, no objection from drainage, no objection for highways, how we can actually refuse or defer this application. It does pain me to say that because, you know, I think the applicant is going to really struggle to bring forward 350 houses on this site with all the competing land uses that are required to make it acceptable in terms of the ecological buffering, you know, source protection zones, the flooding, etc. I would be surprised if they managed to get 350. I hope that we get the affordable housing element on there. So, you know, I can understand why the officer has recommended the tilted balance in favour of this outline application. I would like to hear more debate, but I think we are onto a sticky wicket with this application, either deferring or refusing it personally, because I think our highways team have worked so hard to get additional conditions and section 106 put on that if it went to appeal, an inspector looking at this would go, well, it's allocated in your plan for greater quantum of housing. You know, I could see that we wouldn't get those applications put on, those conditions put on. That's my personal opinion. But if anyone else would like to say, and then I'll have another thought about it. Thanks.
Thank you for a very, very, very fine.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually currently minded in favour on balance, but still would like more information on how we resolve the identified problem with the access up at the Roman Road end.
Do you want to deal with that? Yep. Yeah, I got it.
Okay, so I think this is something we'll probably manage between myself and the local highway authority. But just to put on the screen there, the access point to the north onto Roman Road. So can I hand over to you just talk through that element? Thank you, Katie.
Hi, yeah. This access has been subject to extensive technical reviews, both in terms of an engineering element and also the capacity elements, looking at the flows on Roman Road and also the junction modelling, and we have concluded that it's an acceptable form of junction. If we welcome further clarification as to what actually the main issue is with this junction, because from a technical point of view and also from a junction modelling point of view, we've concluded that it's suitable.
Sorry, is it worth just pointing out that because it's a right-hand turn lane, isn't it? There's a lane.
Yes, yeah, it's a priority junction with a ghost right turn lane, so traffic wouldn't have to sit on the Roman Road in order to turn right into the site and hold up traffic.
Councillor, respond to that.
Can I just double check? Because I think Councillor Crockett, as the joining ward member, referenced the speed along there being 60. I think you're proposing to drop it to 40 further back, aren't you? And I'm assuming you're effectively narrowing the carriageway to fit in that right-hand turn, or that will give the perception of the highway narrowing. Is that not correct, or?
To confirm whether there's actual narrowing, I'll have to check on that. But yes, the overall effect will appear to be a narrowing. Whether there's actually a physical narrowing, I'll have to double check. But yes, the fact that there is a lot more features at the junction, it will naturally slow traffic anyway, as well as the 40-mile-an-hour limit. But yes, in order to physically check whether there's a narrowing, I'll check.
Yeah, we'll just deal with that. I think it's important. Right. Councillor Gennard?
Thank you. Many thanks to Heather for her report, as people have said, and our site visit yesterday. My issues come with the environmental impact of this proposal. I feel that the complex geography was not actually clear when the site selection was made for our core strategy. So the policy HD5 that covers this western urban expansion actually doesn't mention an aquifer. However, within the core strategy, there are other locations that mention aquifers. So in those cases, I'm assuming that they were known and obvious. So an assumption from my behalf that the aquifer within this area was not known before it was chosen for an expansion area. So policy SD1 calls to ensure new development does not contribute to or cause groundwater pollution. Policy SD3, sustainable water management and water resources. Point 9, development should not cause an unacceptable risk to the availability or quality of water resources. So I'm really concerned with this aquifer and any water or anything that's going to filter down into that. I do understand that Heineken have agreed sort of on their position statement that there'll be restrictions of disposal through the ground drainage system. They'll be asking residents not to. My question is, how on earth is that going to be enforced? Is that a Hereford Council enforcement? Do we sort of regularly check what people have in their houses and their sheds? I really don't see how that can be enforced. So that's my position on that. Thank you.
Ms. Carlyle.
Thank you for your commentary in that regard. As you highlighted, I'm unable to comment in respect to the sort of historical sort of clarification in regard to the aquifer in terms of the knowledge of the allocating of the site. But again, to reassure you in regard to the current situation in terms of this application, as sort of detailed within my presentation, is that there are going to be bespoke conditions in regards to in terms of sort of identifying and in terms of the clarification in regards to the in terms of the sort of addressing the issue in terms of private water supply. In respect to the proposal that officers have secured in regards to the sort of there's packs that we have secured in regards to the heads of terms for the in regards to the, I suppose, the information packs for residents. That will be linked in terms of the, I suppose, in terms of the management or controlling of that. I suppose the finer detail in regards to how that's going to be managed hasn't actually sort of been bottomed out yet. But what I can say is that in regards to the open space element and in terms of that part of it, then there's going to be a management company that would be responsible for that. So in terms of the individual residents, I don't think that there is, in terms of the mechanism in terms of controlling that, there isn't a way, sorry.
Yeah, so just this has been going on for a really long time, just dragging my mind back to it. Some of the conversations we had were, how would you control that by condition that you can't do something or you can't, you know, so we agreed that at that point you couldn't put a condition saying you mustn't use a certain type of detergent or you mustn't use certain things. So because you're right, absolutely right, it's something that we would enforce or do that. What we can do is educate people about those things, and this is after a significant amount of discussion with the Environment Agency and with that primary user. So you've seen the letter from Heineken. They are or from Heineken's legal team, in fact, about how they, they have over the course of time have come to the position, accepting that position in terms of providing those information packs to occupiers and to understand the position. There is not an objection on that ground. And unfortunately, that is the position that we are in. That is what we are making the recommendation on the basis of. Those two key consultees have not raised an objection on that ground. I appreciate it's sensitive. I do understand the comment and the fact that we've actually explored it to that extent. I would hope we give you some assurance that we're not dismissing it. We have looked at it over a number of years to get to that position.
I've got a backlog here. Councillor Andrews, Councillor Engels, and then Councillor Taylor, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I was a ward councillor when this site was first thought of in 2015, and I well remember attending a public meeting then in which the proposal to include this site for housing was extremely unpopular. The situation does not appear to have changed. But I understand we're here today, we can only discuss the proposals for access. It's a pity, really, because the elephant in the room is really the proposal for the whole development on good agricultural land and with many problems with drainage, water and flooding. But we'll have to wait for the Reserved Matters application, I understand, to discuss that. So I'll concentrate on the access. And thank you for the site visit yesterday, Heather. It was most informative. It really was very helpful indeed. I mean, the proposed mini roundabout on 3 Elms Road, I could hardly believe it when we were told where it was going to be. It's less than 100 yards from the access with Grandstand Road. A few yards further up is the access from Tillington Road, the old Tillington Road by the 3 Elms pub. Further down the road, there's a pedestrian crossing for the benefit of people going to and from Whitecross School. And all I can say is, I can think we all envisage the chaos and traffic congestion that is going to occur when this wonderful new mini roundabout is installed. And guess who's going to get all the blame for it, all the traffic hold-ups? We are, the council. I won't say much more about the Roman Road one because many others have already discussed it. But a thought has occurred. The huge development of housing at Homer, traffic lights were put on that stretch of Grandstand Road. Have the traffic lights not been thought of to make the access for this new development safer? I just wonder if they work on the lower end of Grandstand, Roman Road, for the Homer development, which is extremely large, could they not be thought of for the Roman Road one? I just wonder if that has been considered or not. But I would say, I think we're all unhappy about this, but I think the chairman has said it correctly. Given the current attitude of the government, if we refuse it, it will go to appeal and they will almost certainly win. So I think with the greatest reluctance, we have to support it.
Thank you, Chair. Since this matter may not come again until many of us are gone from the council, I just want to put something on record for future use. I've spent the last 4 days dealing with the effects of flooding. Modern bungalows bought in innocence in places that have never flooded before. One of them was cut off from all directions for a period of time. We have to realise that outdated definitions of flood zones may not apply in 10, 20, 30 years, which is going to be the timescale of this proposal if it happens. Something like 1,000 people might be living in that site by the time. And those flood zones, they're being disputed even now, and they're going to be disputed much more in the time to come. The voters of Herefordshire generally have to play against the wind to object to anything that is proposed in this room, though the opinions of large corporations tend to get much more attention. And there's one of the most famous adverts of the 1970s had the slogan, Heineken reaches the parts other beers can't reach. And I'm sure that they got the planning department's ear. I just want people to consider, when this is reconsidered, as it seems to be going to do, I really want the issues not only of Heineken's, but of all the difficulties that have been brought up here should be resurrected and treated much more seriously than I think they have been yet. Thank you.
I thought for one moment you said what you wanted to put on record, you were going to put on your tombstone. I thought you were going Right. Councillor Thomas now, and then Councillor Taylor, and Councillor Baker then.
As regards Heineken, Heineken no longer process cider fruit at Hereford. So their demand of water is nowhere near. They process, they bottle, but they do not process. So I can quite see why they've withdrawn their application. I think it's more on technical grounds than access. It's been said, the access onto Roman Road is ridiculous. It's far too close to Tillington. What's that? Sort of on a scale, probably 60, 70 yards, meters. So that's just a ridiculous place to have it. It's going to be far better to take it down the road towards the caravan site. I know this site. There is probably 200 acres, 100 hectares almost, between the caravan site and the market, which is far more suitable if you're going to have it for housing. It's leveler, doesn't flood very often, but say very often because obviously we everywhere is flooding worse. But the access onto Three Elms Road, yesterday we all walked there and we went to cross. It took us ages just to get across the road. But as pedestrians. And this is what, 10 past 11 yesterday, which is a quiet time. And sorry, but you in the highways, you've done a marvellous job, but that is going to cause absolute chaos there with a mini roundabout. And all, plus you've got an entrance to a housing estate, small as it may be, opposite. Now, I think there's far too many unanswered questions on this, and I personally think we should ask for, I agree with everything that's been said, but I think we should ask for a deferment on this so we can get some of these unanswered questions right first, then bring it back, even in this stage, bring it back to us. Because quite frankly, I think the two points of access...
Can you outline what questions?
Sorry?
Can you outline what questions? What questions? You said you want to ask questions, what they are.
The question is access. Both accesses are wrong. Even though I know there's a huge amount of work gone into it, but both accesses are wrong, especially the one onto Roman Road. It is far too close to the Tillington turn to be of any use whatsoever.
Yeah, well, I suppose you vote against it then. Councillor Taylor and then Councillor
Thank you, Chair. I just want to bring up the Roman road access again. I use this road quite a lot. I live quite close to this area. There's an awful lot of agricultural vehicles going up and down that road at great speed. And you're saying that you're looking at narrowing that area. It's quite dangerous. The agricultural vehicles do take longer to stop. They're going down there. You've got large tractors with trailers on. You've got 4x4s with trailers with livestock in. You've got large lorries going down there with livestock in. And that's a weekly thing, 2-3 times a week. How are you aware of that type of vehicle going up and down there when you were doing your process on this?
Hi, yeah. As part of the junction has resulted in more carriageway, more overall width, but the running lanes we've 3.8 metres for each lane, and then the 3 metre right turn lane. In terms of the 3.8 metre lanes, normally for an industrial estate, we'd expect a carriageway of 7.3 metres. So therefore, it's in excess of that width requirement. So it should be able to accommodate all sort of HGVs and agricultural traffic easily.
Thank you. Can I just bring up one other thing about all this application? And I understand that, again, I keep going on about this outline and this coming back to us, hopefully. Is it helpful that we do talk about our concerns about this now, so that it is actually, as Councillor Angle saying, and we are all saying, that this is on record and this can be, brought up as this process moves forward, rather than just waiting?
I'm afraid that's the way the whole system works, nationally, locally, etc. We don't know that it'll ever come back. It may be the economic climate, who knows what sort of things will happen. It wouldn't be the first. I've got...
Yeah, it's just, I think just a quick one on that. I think you see throughout the report as well, you would have seen, officers have had to do that. They've referenced the concerns that have been raised, they've referenced matters that need to be considered, and they've said this will need to be considered in detail at the next stage. It's a second part of the process. It doesn't automatically mean everything's going to be okay. They just need to, there was extra work that needs to be done to inform that next stage. So it's quite, you can reference your concerns. The answer we're giving you is, yes, we acknowledge it. We'll need to deal with it at the next stage, at the reserve matter stage. It's not brushing it away. It's just saying we will need to consider it at the next stage. And we're acknowledging that ourselves in our report. We know that we need to do that. So hopefully that reassures you. The only other thing I think is just, I know you make reference to current conditions on the road and the network, but again, it's about looking at what those proposals will do. They will change the nature of that road environment. They will add footways, they will add crossing points, they will add, those features that will slow people down or allow movement, or those have all been factored in when coming up with these proposals. What you're seeing when you're standing there, and I know we've had this conversation as a committee before, what you're seeing when you're standing there is not what it will be when it's operating. So there will be a change to that road environment, and just remember that the plans, you've got copies of the plans, remember that there will be a change. There will be footways, connections, crossings, and all of those additional, and the reason it's taken such a long time to get before you is because we have gone into this process and into this application, try to ensure that those pedestrian and cycle movements have got priority and are considered at an early stage. So hopefully you'll see that through the report and through, as Councillor Simmons pointed out, the many iterations of Highways comments, because we've gone back and challenged on those points. So, but they have all been through a very rigorous process of reporting and checking and clarifying and making sure that we are aware of the constraints, and that we have got that technical no objection from the local highway authority after a significant period of consideration of the matters.
Right. I've got Councillor Baker and then Councillor Simmons. And Councillor Davis and then Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Chairman. Bring us back to the reason we're here this morning. Our main job is to agree or not the access onto this site. There are 2 access points, and I had some concerns about one of them, but of course I've now been told that this isn't the place for that. And given it some thought, there are professional officers in this council who are much better qualified than me, although everyone's an expert when it comes to traffic. But so these officers have agreed the design of the 2 access points, and I will accept their opinions and their judgments. And I'd like to make an official recommendation that this application is approved.
Right. Is that seconded? That sounded by Councillor Davis. Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chair. I have gone back, as I said, because the access and transport and movements did worry me, but that's why I went back painstakingly through all the iterations and the documents and the communications that have been had by our highways team with the applicants' consultants. And it is clear to me that various iterations have been considered. I can see why the access is where it is, contrary to Councillor Thomas's suggestion to go further left. You're taking it into a faster section of road, further away from junctions, that would require the extension of the 40 limit further. You're also putting it in conflict with 2 other access points on that side as well then, with the mobile homes and the new development at the top there. So I can see why it's being put where it is. I agree that potentially, you know, we're not highways engineers. We have to believe what our experts are telling us, and I think I can cope with that one. On the 3 Elms Road, what I just want to check is there are 2 mini roundabouts. There's obviously one by the Co-op, and then there's the one further south, I believe. That's right, isn't there? Yeah, is there not one at the junction of Grandstand Road and 3 Elms Road? Have I missed? Hang on, I just want to check, because it relates to kind of how fast vehicles will be travelling down there. So some of the iterations of the plan, there were 2 mini roundabouts. One up by the Co-op, and then one further down.
There's a mini roundabout at the junction with Yeazer Road. As you go down Grandstand Road with Yeazer Road, there's one mini roundabout.
Okay,
there.
and there's not another one further up. There is.
No.
Hang on.
Sorry, yes,
Right.
there are 2 mini roundabouts. There's one for Grandstand Road and there is one for the access.
So that will reduce the speeds along there, because I know that there is a real issue down that road with speeding. The bottom one, the bottom mini roundabout, that's the main access onto the site. My concern is that when you get more detail about the flooding and the levels and etc. in that portion of the site, which I think is recognised as being in flood zone 2, that you are potentially creating a pathway for either pluvial or fluvial flooding to come out onto 3 Elms Road, which we're already seeing on the pluvial flooding maps, and we've seen in the photographs submitted in our agenda updates that there is flooding there. Is that, I tend to agree that the location of that roundabout is great because of the Toucan crossing and being able to connect into the off-road walking and cycling path. I can see why you've put it there for Connaught Place or Connaught Avenue. I can't remember the name of the road. So it's giving that quieter route for people to walk or potentially cycle through. and connect into Grandstand Road. But if this then comes through at Reserve Matters, would it require a section 93 material amendment, 73, sorry, minor material amendment, or would that be a new planning application if, as a result of the flooding data and investigations, you might need to revise the location of that?
I mean, first of all, I think it was highlighted in the most recent commentary from the drainage engineer, as they actually highlighted in their commentary, didn't they, in respect of the potential of the ongoing risk, I think, in terms of the language they used for surface water within that proposed sort of location of Three Elms Road. So yes, it's been highlighted, and again, it's going back to, like you say, going back to the drainage officer is, again, they're aware of it, but they're still confirming that the principle is acceptable for them in terms of sort of mitigation. Like you say, in respect to potential sort of revisions or amendments, yes, there are mechanisms within the within the planning regime to make alterations and under sort of a Section 73 application to ensure that the deliverability of that roundabout can meet the concerns of the local lead flow authority and in terms of meeting highway safety. So to answer to your question, yes, there is mechanisms.
So although we're agreeing potentially, if the committee votes for Councillor Baker and Davis's motion, then we are able to alter potentially, as a result of investigations that will come at Reserve Matters, that access point. Confirmed.
That's correct.
Brilliant.
I think probably just to add to that, as part of any road adoption or the works with the Highways Authority, they obviously rigorously look at the flood and drainage issues, notwithstanding planning, I suppose, and that will inform how that road is designed and adopted as well. So there's a second check and balance on that as well with the local highway authority as part of their processes for adoption or for licence agreements.
Sorry, I know you're really passionate about it. But this is what I'm getting there, and it's really helpful if people could just be quiet. Can we just confirm that the highways are adopted onto site?
So if this works within the highway, it's a Section 278 agreement. I don't know about the section, whether or not it is to be adopted. If it was adopted, if the internal roads, etc., are to be adopted, which, is again, is a future decision, then that would be that is rigorously looked at. If not, then there's conditions that look at that anyway, and that would form part of the Reserve Matters. But in terms of this work in the highway, to this roundabout and the junction that it's coming to, that is going to be subject to agreements because it will be under 278. So we will have oversight of that.
Bearing in mind the time, Councillor Davis, did you want to speak or were you just seconding?
I would like to speak.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank everybody for their heartfelt thoughts on this matter. It's really important that we all understand where we stand. The part I wanted to reiterate here was that this is the western expansion for this city. And has been identified as such, and that this matter is purely for access. And as we've discussed, there are issues with the site, with flooding, drainage, etc., water, which will come to us further down the line, hopefully, where we can make decisions on them to make sure that any construction work that goes here will be appropriately handled and not impact any other residents, people in the area, which is utterly key. But coming back to the access points, I think it's key that we understand that the active travelways, the cycle paths that are in existence along Roman Road will not be impacted by the junction that comes into it. As you may well be aware, I do tend to cycle, and I just don't like wearing lycra. It's not just that. But no, I'm happy with the decisions made by the planning officers and the highways on the access points, the pedestrian crossing particularly down by the mini roundabout, and also the access out onto Roman Road, and the speed limits and the filter lanes will all be key elements to making it safe access onto this estate, and consequently I support it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to sort of go further along with what Councillor Thomas was saying about maybe a proposal to defer this decision. This is because I think all concerns about access are irrelevant if half the area is unsuitable or unsafe for development. And that has not been established yet. I mean, we've got a question over whether that Western Urban Extension area was properly surveyed, and maybe in the call to sites you don't have to do a full survey to find out whether land is suitable or not. However, in policy SS7, addressing climate change, we've got key considerations in terms of response. The first consideration is taking into account the known physical and environmental constraints when identifying locations for development. We don't have that. We don't have the geophysical survey. It's been put as point 19 and the conditions that we're going to have it later. What's the point of banging our heads together about access on Roman Road, Three Elms, or wherever it's got to be, if actually the known physical and environmental constraints when identifying locations for development are unknown? So I say we need to know that before we can go forward. So my proposal would be to defer until we have that information.
Can I say we've got an amendment, a resolution on the table which we have to deal with first? Do you want to come back on Councillor Woodall's?
Yeah, I think so. So in terms of we have got the information that we require in terms of what those known constraints are, and we have had the information that we require to be able to make a decision in principle on this application, i.e. is a site suitable for development. There are next steps to be done. I know I'm banging on about this today, but there are, the Reserve Matters application allows us to further expand on those. If we weren't satisfied that they could be addressed, we wouldn't be in a position where we were recommending approval at this stage. I'm unable to advise whether or not the full extent of that was known at the time of the core strategy allocation, but having been involved in this site now since 2015, on and off with the other wider application, I know that there has the matter of the ground conditions, the geotech side of things, the aquifer has been fully explored and has been expanded on. That's why we're sort of 10 years into this process, I guess, is because there has been a huge amount of technical data that's had to be gathered. There's been an awful lot of exploration of those constraints. What we're saying to you is we, in full consultation with those people that need, the technical consultees, we're satisfied that we've got enough to say that in principle we believe this site to be acceptable for development in principle, but there are further works that need to be done on the detail. So it's all of the sites on the issues of this site are complex. They're not straightforward. That's part of the reason it's taken it's taken as long as it has to get to this point. So that is our recommendation. I appreciate we've got a resolution on the table. We are satisfied that with the conditions that are proposed and with the further consideration of some of these matters at Reserve Matters stage, we are in a position to recommend approval for the principle of development and the access on the site with the suite of conditions and with the Section 106 agreement. So we feel that we have explored all of those issues and brought those to a resolution. I appreciate you still got concerns about them, and they are complex matters.
Can I just reply? Thank you. I'll be brief. Thank you for that, Kelly. But I don't understand that in all that time from 2015 onwards, why a foundation risk assessment hadn't been obtained. If that's what the implication is by the condition here, 19B, a foundation risk assessment for that phase shall be submitted and approved by local planning authority. So that that means we haven't had one in all that time for the suitability to check that actually all that area or some of that area is suitable or not suitable for development.
yeah, and that's the point is up to 350 dwellings. So if there is some areas that maybe cannot be brought forward, follow further exploration, it might be that it's not 350 dwellings. It's an up to 350. And again, that's not an unusual situation when you see on many outline applications that will say up to, but it may be reduced following further exploration of the details, of the technical details.
Right. Yeah, I think we stretched it a bit. All right if it's brief.
I just want to point out actually that this application's taken this long to get to this point, and there are holes in this application. And I understand that we are at this present time just looking at the access, and we will be voting on the access today. I understand what Councillor Woodall's saying, and I agree with Councillor Woodall that that is a very important aspect of this application. Again, I'm still confused with regards to this in principle.
Right. I think we at last moved towards a conclusion. As neither local or adjoining member here to sum up, I'll ask, are there any officers wish to make further comment?
Thank you. Just in response to Councillor Taylor, I just want to say that it's the principle of development as well, in addition to the access. So it's the principle of development on that site, with all of those matters reserved with the further details later. And it's the access which will be defined and agreed and set out, the principle of development with the detailed matters to follow. It's not just the access, it's the principle of development.
Right. There is a proposal with the as outlined in the agenda. Can I ask for those in favour, please indicate. Those in favour, please. Those against? Abstentions? None. Okay. That's now carried. Can I now have a 10-minute break and we can come back then and go as full as we can, please? We are live? Great. Welcome back to the planning meeting. We now have the second application, which is Ayleston High School, Broadland Lane, Herefordshire. Can I ask that, request that Mr. Hancorn and Mr. Molyneux Wright please take their seats at the public speaking area. Welcome to the meeting. I'll call you to speak when the officer's presentation has been done. Mr. Jones, perhaps, if you are ready, we'll.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. So as the Chair's referred, applications 251073, and it's an application for planning permission for a proposed two-storey educational building with landscaping and infrastructure works at Ayleston High School, Broadlands Lane, Hereford. The application is referred to the committee as it has been made by Herefordshire Council. First of all, would refer members to the schedule of updates. There's not a lot to say on these, and I trust that they're self-explanatory. I would highlight the slightly amended suite and schedule of conditions. There's also a slight change to the wording of the recommendation as well, just to allow for any changes to conditions that are considered necessary by officers. Just in addition to the update sheet, there is one further point of clarification. I did identify a typo within the proposal section of the report at paragraph 2.2. It states that there would be 13 additional classrooms, whereas there are actually 8 large-size classrooms proposed with other ancillary teaching spaces as well. But I'll run through the plans of the building, so for the avoidance of any doubt later in the presentation. So next slide, please. Yeah, so approximate location of the site shown by the red star on the map. So members that visited the site yesterday will be familiar with it, but located to the northeastern extent of the city, accessed via Broadlands Lane off Ayleston Hill. Next slide, please. So slightly zoomed in again. So yes, the principal vehicle access via Broadlands Lane to the north, but there's also secondary access from Prospect Walk off Eastner Drive to the east, and those are shown by the blue stars. Members will be aware from the report that the site does experience congestion at peak times, and parking is over capacity with limited parking on the site. So again, highways and access are a key constraint for consideration, as discussed within the report. The school sits within a cluster of educational uses, so Broadlands Primary to the immediate west and sort of surrounded by the school. Beacon College SEND facility to the sort of northeast, and then you've got Hereford Sixth Form, the Arts College, and Herefordshire and Ludlow College to the south, which are accessed off Folly Lane. The site includes the Grade 2 listed Ayleston School building and is also close to the Grade 2 listed Athelstan Hall. These are identified within the report. And as mentioned within the updates, the very western extent of the application site is located within the Ayleston Hill Conservation Area, but there's no development proposed in this particular area. Ecologically, the site is near the Broadlands Local Nature Reserve and the Riverlug SSSI. Number of mature trees on the site, but aren't covered by trees preservation orders, and there's no identified risk of flooding on the site. And just to see from the plan as well, you can see that residential areas, the border of the site, but away from the location of the proposed building itself. So there's residential areas off Whittam Way, Eastner Drive to the east, Broadlands Lane to the north, and then Ayleston Hill to the west. Next slide, please. Yeah, so aerial view again, just showing the site's context and the points that I've already raised. You can see the approximate location of the proposed building, sitting to the western side of one of the existing playing fields. And you can see just to the immediate left of that, the multi-use games area as well. Next slide, please. So this is one of the proposed site plans. The building indicated in blue is the proposed new building. You'll also note again the multi-use games area to the west would be converted for use as a car park to serve the development, with a purpose-built access provided to serve this from the loop road that you can see running off the access from Broadlands Lane. It also include kind of additional hard-standing footways as well to link the new building with the rest of the school site. And the next slide, we'll go on to the proposed elevations. So, as mentioned, 2-storey, comprised of essentially 2 main blocks. Design would be functional but befitting of its intended educational use. Materials including metal, vertical and composite cladding, buff brick, which would sort of assist in providing a contemporary finish. And I think the next slide is a visual that's taken from the applicant's design and access statement, so that just shows what the development could look like in context. So you can make out the existing multi-use games area to the fore of the building, and then to the right, so to the west, you can see the parking that would make use of the existing multi-use games area and the sort of newly configured road leading to the car park. In between the building and the car park, you can make out that sort of outdoor classroom that we saw yesterday, so that would remain as is. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as mentioned at the start, this is the ground floor plan. So it includes sports hall, then you've got 2 classrooms, including one to principally be dedicated for music, with some sort of separate breakout rooms as well, but also changing rooms and other ancillary spaces, storage areas, serving a variety of uses. First floor is next slide. So again, further classrooms, other rooms for staff, storage, etc. And then the next slide shows the proposed roof plan. It's fairly standard with some PV panels, plant equipment as well. Next slide. So again, this just shows, this is one of the detailed landscaping plans, but it shows the site, this part of the site in more detail. And again, the proposed hard standings and footway links to be provided, cycle storage to the immediate north in yellow, and then again the car parking, making use of the existing multi-use games area. Next slide, please. So I guess a important element of the scheme is the changes to the existing access loop, which enters the site from Broadlands Lane. So members that attended the site visit yesterday, we entered from the kind of principal access off Broadlands Lane and walked past the Grade 2 listed Ayleston School building. So to touch upon and set out in the report, existing sort of highways issues that exist on Broadlands Lane, which are ultimately exacerbated by a lack of coherent flow into and through the site for parking and drop-off and pickups, etc. Discussions have taken place between ourselves and the local highway authority and the applicant to reach a solution, which you can see on the plan, which basically makes alterations to that loop to accommodate further parking spaces, drop-off and waiting bays, and bus, coach, pickup and drop-off bays. So that would be an inherent part of the scheme to address the existing issue, but also to accommodate for the uplift that would come forward given the increased capacity of the school. You'll note from that plan, I think worth mentioning at this stage, is the 2 trees that you can see to be removed. I know that was mentioned on site yesterday. So there's a blue spruce and a Sitka spruce of low and moderate value, respectively, as set out within the tree report, the ARB statement. So there's 2 trees there that would be required for removal to accommodate those additional bays. But obviously, as you can see, there are a lot of trees there that would be retained. Again, worth pointing, there's another tree as well that you can see outlined in red to the south of that, and that existing car park, and that would require removal. That's a low value oak, a young oak, because there's that location would be used in terms of site compound. So that's just to highlight that, I guess. Next slide. Again, just to provide some context, I guess, in terms of understanding the changes. So this shows the location of the proposed building to the south of the site, its proximity to the loop road and those trees to be removed. You can see the designated heritage assets that are shaded, circled in blue. Broadlands Primary School in yellow. So as I said, the site outlined in red sort of wraps around the primary school. But again, it's just useful for identifying the existing playing fields associated with the school, and also the multi-use games area, so the one next to the site and the one to the front of it as well. Next slide, please. And then again, for context, this looks southwest over the school, so you can see the existing building in the foreground, the location of the proposed building annotated, and again the adjacent multi-use games area. And I think also helpful just to looking at the sort of context of the site in relation to the existing kind of educational campus vernacular that you have because of the proximity to the colleges off Folly Lane, and members will have picked up on that relationship yesterday. And then there's a couple of photos now as well. So this just looks sort of southeast across the playing field. So it's there essentially in which the proposed 2-storey building would be located. And then I think the next one is, so yeah, that just looks sort of west and is kind of the area between the proposed building and the car parking. So that existing multi-use games area, which is sort of in a rather unkempt state at the moment. That's the one again that would be used for car parking. Next slide, please. Yeah, so just to, I guess, touch on the main issues which are set out within the report. Obviously, the site is an established secondary school within Hereford's urban area, and the proposal is predicated on the council's decision to expand Ayleston High School in terms of pupil intake and the form entries. So in broad terms, the core strategy and indeed the National Planning Policy Framework support the expansion of educational facilities where there is considered to be an identified need for that. So the overall principle is considered broadly acceptable. I think the main issue that members will note from the report is with respect to the loss of the playing field, partial loss of the playing field and multi-use games areas, as I've identified. So yeah, the proposal would result in the loss of part of that existing playing field and the conversion of that multi-use game area to provide for parking. Sport England, they're a statutory consultee. They have raised a statutory objection as essentially the area that's being replaced, the area is lost, is not being replaced on a like-for-like basis, and the school already has a technical shortfall in playing field provision. Important to note that the area being lost is not large enough for formal pitch sports at the moment. It's underused due to its size and its gradient, and is considered to be of limited value for curriculum and indeed community use. The council's open space officer supports this position, confirming that the land is incapable of providing suitable formal sports provision and that community access at the school does not have security for its use, so it cannot be counted towards meeting that local pitch need. The new provision, however, which is a significant qualitative improvement, it may not be a quantitative improvement, but it's a significant qualitative improvement, would be available for clearly both the school but also community use, and informal sports provision could be relocated elsewhere on the site. So there would be no net loss with respect to considering curriculum PE. So while the proposal does raise some tension with some of the considerations and expectations of core strategy policy OS3 and the sort of principles as set out within the MPPF at paragraph 104, officers do consider that the substantial benefits of a modern accessible sports facility do outweigh the limited harm from the partial loss of the playing field and a deteriorated multi-use games area. So on balance, the scheme is considered acceptable, subject to the referral to the Secretary of State due to that unresolved technical objection from Sports England, and that is set out in full within your report. So in terms of access, yeah, if you could next slide, please. Broadlands Lane, again, as I've already touched on, one experiences congestion at school, drop-off and pick-up times. And as I've alluded to, the scheme does now include a reconfigured and enhanced one-way internal loop with 24 short-stay drop-off spaces, which would help manage traffic and reduce pressure on Broadlands Lane. So clearly, whilst you would still have vehicles travelling down Broadlands Lane and essentially could have an uplift due to the intensification of that, the proposal and the use of that loop looks to introduce a flow into and through the site, which there isn't at the moment. Members would have picked up yesterday there were people parking on grassed areas. That's simply due to a lack of parking and kind of a contrived internal layout, which just exacerbates those existing issues that are experienced on Broadlands Lane. I think the next slide actually has the parking changes that are taken. So we've got the loop actually first. So yeah, that's just in terms of what I've spoken about. The proposal increases on-site parking. I think the next slide, there we go. Increases the on-site parking, including accessible and visitor spaces, and improves cycle and pedestrian routes through the school as well. So this shows the difference. So there's an uplift of 20 spaces, but also additional 60 cycle spaces. There's currently quite a deficit of cycling provision, whereas the proposal would look to demonstrably increase that provision. Linked to that, I guess, there's a travel plan, and a robust travel plan would be required to be updated as secured by condition, and that would include a steering group and sort of measures to promote sustainable travel. So that kind of goes hand in hand really with the changes that have been provided and sought by the local highway authority in terms of increasing the number of cycles parking as well. So in essence, the local highway authority raised no objection and considered a revised scheme to provide kind of tangible improvements to access, circulation and safety. And that's, again, been an iterative process since the application was submitted in March. There have been discussions, I think it's worth mentioning, there have been discussions surrounding the Safe Routes to School initiative. I know that was picked up on the site visit yesterday. That's currently in a trial phase. It was launched, I believe, at the start of November. And ultimately, as the name suggests, it's looking at what works and what doesn't. There may be aspirations in terms of the council to roll that out on a permanent basis, but the issue that we have is that we can't rely on that at this stage as being a permanent solution, because there's just no certainty that will come forward to prevent traffic from entering Broadlands Lane. And that's why we've worked with the applicant's team to reach this solution in terms of the revisions to the loop and the additional parking as well. And then finally, just to touch on some of the other matters. So in terms of considering heritage impacts and design, As I said, the site includes the Grade 2 listed Ayleston School. It's also near to Athelstan Hall as well. The far west of the site forms part of the conservation area. The new building is sited away from the listed buildings. It's screened by existing trees and uses materials and landscaping that would integrate with that sort of educational campus vernacular that members should have picked up on site yesterday, given the proximity to the colleges. Building would be contemporary in its appearance, with a focus clearly on functionality and accessibility. The Conservation Officer considers that there would be a low level of less than substantial harm to the setting of listed buildings, but as set out in the report, the benefits associated with the scheme are considered to outweigh this limited harm. And then in terms of ecology, the proposal would deliver the mandatory 10% biodiversity net gain, with new habitats and planting as well proposed throughout. Lighting scheme has been submitted and considered by the local, by the ecology team, and that's considered to be acceptable. In terms of drainage, foul water would connect to the main sewer with no objection from Welsh Water, and similarly surface water drainage requires agreement with third-party landowner for connection to the public surface water sewer. This involves attenuation at a rate suggested by Welsh Water, and there's a condition for that as well. But there's a Grampian style condition as well to ensure that that connection can be made over that third-party land as well. So to conclude, the proposal would deliver much needed modern educational and sports facilities at Ayleston High School. Whilst it would result in the loss of some playing field land, the area affected is considered to be of a reduced value for formal sport, and the new indoor provision would offer substantial qualitative improvements. Highways, heritage, ecology, drainage matters, as well as all of those set out in the report, have been carefully considered and have been satisfactorily addressed through the design process and or through planning conditions as set out within the update report. So therefore the application is recommended for approval as set out within the update report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. And now can I ask Mr. Hancorn to speak in objection to the proposal?
Chair, members, we all want better schools and better trust in local services, but this proposal does not meet the test of fair process or genuine public need. Herefordshire Council is both the applicant and the decision maker. It is using the PSI fast-track route intended for urgent public facilities. This location is also the predetermined option, not the result of any objective site assessment or educational justification. Cabinet approved the principle in February 23, and FOI shows officers describing it as the start of a potential new school, extending outward from this building and further encroaching upon playing field land. Over 2 years later, that longer-term agenda was never shared transparently with the public, yet the Council now claims that this is an urgent PSI project. Sports England's statutory objection remains live. This application fails the exception test that engages the 2021 consultation direction. If members are minded to improve, it must be referred to the Secretary of State before any permission can be issued, yet the report still asks you to grant permission. That cannot be right when a statutory objection stands. There is no consultee response from education, no statement of need, no demand data, even though the PSI justification rests entirely on educational necessity. At the same time, the Council's own figures show declining secondary numbers. How can members give significant public benefit weight when this need is unproven and when October DFE data show outcomes deteriorating, not improving? It is difficult to see why a 13 million PSI fast track has been pursued in these circumstances. Other key impacts remain unresolved or deferred to conditions which would fall to the same leadership and the same pattern of poor site management. As the nearest neighbours, we already experience this, including abandoned goalposts pushed directly to our Grade 2 listed open boundary, despite complaints and past assurances. that does not inspire confidence in managing an extended hours, partly commercial facility. And either way, conditions cannot rescue a fundamentally incomplete application. These issues reflect a wider pattern of poor management and governance now under investigation by both the ICO and the LGSCO. Residents raising legitimate questions are being sidelined or shut down, not heard. And only after our MP's intervention did the Council admit the part commercial element, meaning the original consultations were incomplete and misleading. Finally, Chair members, this is about accountability, not obstruction. This is not a lawful or appropriate use of the PSI route. I respectfully urge the committee to defer or refuse this application until a transparent, education-led case with full public accountability comes forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'll invite Mrs. Molyneux-Wright to speak on behalf of the application. Mr. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Tom Molyneux-Wright. I'm an Associate Director at DPP Planning, and we're the agents for the application before you this afternoon. The officer's report provides a detailed and balanced assessment of the proposals and reflects 8 months of discussion on this application, including significant revisions to the scheme to take account of comments that we've received. The school are pleased to see the officer recommending approval for the scheme, which will deliver a transformational change to the sporting and educational facilities at the school. The much needed new facilities will enable participation in sports by students and the local community that are not possible in the very dated facilities which currently exist. The additional capacity that the proposals will deliver will also assist Hereford to meet the identified need for secondary places whilst remaining under the historic capacity of the school. The majority of the comments received on the proposals before today relate to highways matters. As such, following comments from residents and the Highways Authority, the proposals were amended in September to include provision of an on-site drop-off and pick-up facility, as well as increasing the level of car parking being provided around the existing internal loop road. These amendments will assist in reducing the current congestion experienced on Broadland Lane, as well as improving safety for pupils and local residents. These measures are in parallel with the Council's Safer Routes to School initiative, which will restrict access to Broadlands Lane during peak hours. We heard a bit about that from the case officer. As such, as set out in the officer's report, the proposals are considered acceptable in highways terms. In respect to the objection to the proposals by Sport England, as set out in your officer's report, this is an in-principle position that results from the repurposing of the multi-use games area and the loss of a small area of playing fields. Neither of the areas lost are being utilised by sports provision because of their poor quality, meaning that there is no real loss experienced by the school. In their place, a modern sports hall provision will deliver substantial benefits to the physical education of the students and the community. Finally, as set out in your officer's report, aside from the points raised, there are no other objections raised by consultees to the proposals. The design is considered befitting of its function and setting, and the landscape strategy confirmed as contributing positively to the character and appearance of the site compared to the current position. In respect to heritage matters, the distance of the proposals from the closest listed buildings means that a less than substantial harm has been identified, and the benefits of the proposal are considered to far outweigh any perceived low-level harm. In respect of the impact on local residents, controls to construction operation of the expanded site have been found to address any concerns about noise, air quality, general amenity. In summary, following over a year of dialogue...
I'm afraid we've got your 3 minutes is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
He is unable to attend, but he has submitted a statement, which hopefully will be less than 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a statement given on behalf of Councillor Adam Spencer, the Ward Councillor. Chair and members, thank you for hearing this statement. I recognise the urgent need for more school places in Herefordshire, and increasing capacity is essential. However, this proposal still needs to be considered in a wider context to ensure it delivers the best outcome for pupils and the local community. Access to Ayleston School is already extremely constrained. Early indications are that the Safer Schools measures have shifted traffic and parking pressures from Broadlands Lane into the Witton Way area. The school is effectively landlocked, and any expansion will increase strain on an already stretched road network. To address this, a broader transport approach may be needed. For example, consideration could be given to whether existing services, such as the Zipper bus, could be adapted to provide a suitable link from the railway station transport hub. Hereford urgently needs the bypass, but any future scheme will be delivered after this expansion and therefore cannot be factored in to alleviate its impacts. Much of the new housing is also being developed along the Roman Road corridor. With the government now requiring significant extra house building locally, it is important to confirm that this expansion aligns with an updated wider housing plan. I also need to note Ayleston's Ofsted record, 4 consecutive requires improvement judgments since 2016, including leadership and management. The last good rating was in 2011. Given the level investment required, assurance is needed that this remains the right site for major capital funding. In summary, while increasing school places is necessary, issues around access, transport, performance and long-term planning must be fully addressed before a decision is made. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I invite debate. Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask, before I ask any specific questions about the application, could I ask our legal advice on comments made by Mr Hancorn as to whether there are any reasons that we cannot consider this application based on outstanding concerns about due process or anything like that?
So the comments have been raised, have been addressed, and I think probably in terms of the reference to what's called PSI, it's Public Service Infrastructure. It's an application type effectively that was introduced in 2021 by the government, which does have a shorter target date, but as you heard earlier, it does have a shorter target date for determination of 10 weeks, but this application was submitted in March, so we're well over that sort of period, and we have procedurally gone through exactly the same process as we would with any other application, in that we've sought to address issues as they've come along, etc. It is a council application, and because it is a council application and objections have been raised, then in line with the Constitution, it's been brought to Planning Committee for determination. We will and have already notified the Secretary of State of the application, and we will have to wait for their response about potential call-in before we are able to actually formally issue a decision. Hopefully that answers that question. Hang on.
Yeah, and just further, just in terms of the consultation specifically, there is, in terms of the PSI legislation, it is a shorter consultation period. What I would say to that is that in terms of the latest round of consultation that we've done, it has been a belt and braces approach, and it was a 21-day consultation. So we've displayed site notices recently on the basis of the most up-to-date information and revised plans, and that has been subject to a 21-day consultation period, which isn't required in terms of the PSI legislation.
Thank you both. That's really helpful. Thanks for clarifying for me. So we can make a determination based on an objection from Sport England, and that if this were approved, that wouldn't issue a decision notice until Secretary of State had made their decision, and so they could overrule any decision we make. Thank you. So I've looked at this, and I feel there are obviously 2 parts, as you've explained. There's the building and its value, use and impacts, and then there's also the transport and travel arrangements and proposals. Obviously that building, when I looked at the application, introduced a very large new development into what is effectively quite an open park-like space. It was really helpful to go on the site visit, so thank you, Ollie, to really understand how that sits within the context. It was clear that whilst it is introducing a building into quite an open space, that actually, as you said, it sits within the context of the other buildings there and is quite a distance in terms of from the nearest property boundaries, that it would be viewed in the context of those other buildings. So I found that really helpful to see. So in terms of its location, I can see you've got some additional tree screening along the side of the new parking area, so that's welcomed. I take it you can't do anything on the southern boundary because of that requiring access with emergency vehicles along there. The trees that are already noted on the plan, and are they actually in the ownership and outside of the site boundary? Because when we were there, I thought they were inside the site boundary, and I just wanted to make sure those trees on the southern boundary aren't going to be removed to enable you access for vehicles along that boundary.
Yeah, so in terms of turning 2 trees, in terms of the submitted tree report, which is obviously undertaking an assessment of all the trees on the site, so all of those are in the red line boundary, there are 5 trees to be removed in total. So there's the 2 trees within the access loop. There's 1 tree can we bring the slides up? There's 1, it doesn't matter if not, there's 1 tree to be removed, as you can see now on the, so the 2 in the loop, 1 to the south of that, where there's an existing car park, and the reason for the loss of that tree, which is of a low value, is to accommodate construction, compounds, etc. The trees along the southern boundary, some of them I believe are within the site, some aren't, but those are not proposed for removal. There's 2 other trees proposed for removal just to the east of the site, and that's just for, I don't think there's a plan that shows that on here, but it's just to accommodate the proposed footways. But again, they're of low value and they're small trees. So actually in the round, there are only 5 trees being removed. The rest of them are being retained. And there's a condition which secures tree protection and appropriate arbor methods in accordance with that submitted detail, which has been reviewed by the tree officer. So yeah, just the 5.
Thank you for that. That's helpful. I was hoping there'd be sort of a bit more tree planting on the southern boundary to create more of a screening of that quite big frontage, but appreciate that given the Muga and the setback of the sixth form college, that's less of a concern. My greater concern is really the kind of induced, by creating additional parking, you are effectively encouraging more travel by private vehicle to that site, which I guess is already happening because people feel they have no other choice than to drive to access that site because of potentially poor connections through public transport or active travel. So I really welcome what is being done to try and encourage active travel. I'm very pleased to see that there's a transport plan there. It would have been preferable if we'd been able to do those things and see positive change before this comes forward, but I can understand why it's all being done at this time. That's all I have to add. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Just am I remiss, if you could take your seats back in the public area, the public speakers, sorry. Councillor Andrews and then Councillor Woodwall. And then
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. This is probably not relevant to the planning committee, really, but I just wonder, while Aylstone School, if we need more secondary places, why Aylstone School in particular has been chosen. I wasn't going to mention its rather unhappy recent Ofsted record, but the ward councillor has already brought it up. But given its known access problems, I just wonder in particular why perhaps a school that's more easily accessed, like White Cross, wasn't chosen. It's just a query, and I suppose it's not really relevant to the planning committee. But it just seems illogical to choose a school that already has known transport difficulties.
Yeah, I don't think that's something I can answer.
No, I don't think it is really, but it's just a query in my own mind. That, I mean, Whitecross School, if there's sports facilities, is known as a specialist sports college anyway, but still, that's by the way. So I think it sounds a good extension, so I'm happy to support it.
can I say, schools ebb and flow as far as their reputation is concerned. I remember when we first started Herefordshire Council, there were 1,200 pupils at this school, and there were massive numbers of appeals for entry into the school. But that was when we had the famous Southwise, what is now the Southwise Academy, when the reputation of that was not what it should be. But it depends on the times. And
It specialised in music at one time,
yeah.
which is why it was so popular.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll move now on to Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm in support of this application, but I just wanted to clarify a couple of things that I might have missed. I couldn't see any mention of the use of solar panels or photovoltaic cells. Did you actually put up a picture there? For some reason, it wasn't in the documentation, but I saw in the presentation there was what looked like an image of the roof. Is that right? Can you just confirm that?
Yeah, there's solar panels proposed to the roof of the building, as shown on
Great.
the roof plan in the presentation.
So that's in support of our net zero 2030 ambitions, yeah? Brilliant. Thank you very much. So yeah, that further encourages me to support this application. Thank you.
Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very sorry I missed the site visit yesterday to Ayleston. As you rightly say, Chairman, schools do ebb and flow over the years, as I've known in my own past career. It's always regrettable to lose any playing fields, even if it was an underused area. But on the other hand, there's going to be the new sports hall, which means that more sports overall will be played. So there'll be no loss of sports provision for Ayleston. And also there will be community access outside school hours, which I think will benefit quite a lot of people in the local community. I also welcome the extra parking, which will be useful, and at the same time the improved cycle storage and the work that's carrying on with the safer routes to schools. And let's hope that will come up with some more positive suggestions too. So with the modern sports facility, more classrooms, more provision for music, and other parts of the curriculum as well, I think overall this is a good scheme which deserves our support this morning. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Stone. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Simmons?
Other than to suggest that we accept this officer recommendation.
Okay. So is there a proposer and seconder then, please?
On that side.
Right.
Second.
Yeah.
Councillor Thomas is second.
Councillor Thomas seconds. Okay. Those in favour, please show. Okay, that's passed then. Right. We'll move quickly on to the next one, which I hope will be relatively brief. Oh, Bottle, please. Welcome back to the Planning Committee. Now we have the third application, which is the Wheelwrights Pencombe, proposed change of use from public house to a dwelling house. Can the local members, they are already at the bench, I'll call you following the presentation by Miss Cho Ann Hewitt. Chloe, oh sorry. Chloe, sorry, what am I doing? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So, as the Chair stated, the application is for the proposed change of use of the Wheelwrights Public House to a single 4-bedroom dwelling. I would draw members' attention to the Schedule of Updates document, as one further representation has been received since the committee report was published, and additional information has been received from the applicants and the planning agent responding to the representations received and providing additional information regarding the viability of the public house and marketing carried out. The information provided has been considered in detail, and as set out in the Schedule of Updates document, no changes result to the recommendation made. The site's location is indicated, sorry, next slide please, thank you. The site's location is indicated by the red star on the drawing shown, being within the village of Pencombe, which is identified in the core strategy as one of the settlements which will be the focus of proportionate housing development. Next slide please. So the site's location is identified by the red outline on the top drawing and by the red arrow on the aerial photograph below. The site's accessed via a sea road to the south and is surrounded by residential development. Next slide, please. This slide shows photographs of the site, with the top left looking from the sea road to the north, the bottom image showing a similar but wider view, and the top right showing the west elevation. The building is a modest 2-storey structure with rendered walls, stone and red brick chimneys and a slate roof reflective of the local and traditional vernacular. Due to the building's age, design and continuous community use as a public house, the building is considered to be of local heritage value. As can be seen in the photographs, the building is set back from the road with an area of hard standing to the front, which is included in the application site. Next slide, please. This slide shows further images of the site and surroundings, with the top left showing the property to the west of the site known as Number 1 Wakefield, and the top right shows the property to the east known as Staple Cottage. The bottom image shows the west elevation of the existing public house, including the side and rear extensions and the rear garden area. Next slide. These photographs show the existing bar area and the commercial kitchen on the ground floor. Next slide. The drawing on the left of the slide shows the existing ground floor plan, including the bar, kitchen, stores and toilets, and the right shows the proposed ground floor plan, which shows that the existing internal layout would remain the same, with the only alteration being the removal of the bar area and seating and infill of a partition between the proposed living room and the dining room. To the front of the property, 4 parking spaces are identified within the area of existing hard standing. Next slide. The drawing on the left of this slide shows the existing first floor plan, which provides 2-bedroom managers accommodation currently. The proposed first floor plan on the right shows that the existing layout would also remain the same, with the internal works required being limited to the removal of the kitchen units to provide an additional bedroom. Next slide. So the proposal is being assessed against the relevant policies of the Herefordshire Local Plan Core Strategy and the National Planning Policy Framework. There's no neighbourhood plan for the area. The proposal is considered to be acceptable in respect of its locational sustainability for residential development, its design and impact on the character of the site and non-designated heritage asset, residential amenity, drainage and flood risk, ecology, highway safety and parking. However, the change of use of the public house would result in the loss of a valued community facility. Based on the information available and as set out in the officer report, it's considered that insufficient evidence has been provided to demonstrate that there is an appropriate alternative facility available, that the facility is no longer required, viable or fit for purpose, and that adequate marketing is being carried out at a realistic price. As such, the proposal is considered to be contrary to policy SC1 and RA6 of the Herefordshire Core Strategy and paragraphs 88, 96 and 98 of the NPPF. It's therefore recommended that the application is refused. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'll invite Mr. Burge to speak on behalf of Pencombe Group Parish Council. You have 3 minutes.
Hi. So my name is Tim Burge. I'm the Vice Chairman of Pencombe Parish Council. So here on behalf of the parish residents, and we wish to strongly object to the planning application. In talking to residents, it was overwhelmingly clear that they did not want change of use. They feel the negative effects of the loss of the local pub over the last 14 months, and waiting in the hope that it will reopen. I think the sheer volume of objections registered on the planning website also backs this up. I think it ended up at 73 individual objections. We feel that the pub is a vital piece of our community, encouraging social connection, facilitating information flow, and building the sort of friendly atmosphere that seems to be disappearing in today's society, where people in rural areas are becoming increasingly isolated. We feel the permanent loss of the Wheelwright Arms as a public house would have an enormous negative impact on the community. It's that one place that can bring people together from different generations and different walks of life. Other village activities, such as coffee mornings, etc., although great in themselves, they're largely more supported by the retired generation. It's a fear that without a public house, younger people moved into the village won't integrate and won't add their own personality to village life, and contribute to what is so unique and great about living in a village like Pencombe. The village hall has had its own pub nights that they've been running since the pub closed, which has shown a demand. But the village hall is not a substitute for a public house. Bottled beers and cans instead of a functioning cellar. And also an environment that could be considered intimidating for somebody new trying to integrate. Much different to just being able to pop into the pub, sit at the bar and start up a conversation with somebody. And I think further evidence that the village has shown how much it wants a pub is the setting up of the Community Benefit Society, where we were looking at getting a Community Benefit Fund grant. Work was largely done on that grant proposal. The community funding aspect appeared to be no issue following responses to a questionnaire that was circulated. However, these efforts were frustrated by the owner's unrealistic expectation on price. So yeah, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I invite Mr. Lewis and Mr. Haslam to speak in objection to the applicants. You have 3 minutes between you.
Okay, can you hear me? Fine. So I'm going to speak for 1 minute. My name is Mark Haslam. I'm the Public Affairs Officer for Herefordshire CAMRA. I'm an ex-pub landlord and I'm a director of a community benefit society that owns and runs a community-owned pub. I also do freelance marketing work in the pub industry. Initially, on the surface of it, it feels that this pub has been marketed properly, but we did, CAMRA undertook a price comparison with another pub sold by the same agent, Sidney Phillips, the Roebuck Inn at Brimfield. This pub has 2 bars, has a separate cafe and restaurant areas, 3 ensuite letting rooms, and a 4-bedroom owner's accommodation. That compares to a 2-bedroom owner's accommodation, set in gardens and with car parking. A much more substantial property, yet that was sold for £200,000. And the asking price for the Pencombe pub has been north of £250,000 for as long as we can tell. It's not been marketed at a price commensurate with its market value.
Thank you. Hi, my name's James Lewis. I'm an ex-landlord, ex-brewer, current cider maker, chairman of the Parish Council and chairman of the Wheelwrights Arms Community Benefit Society. I trust that you have all read my letter of objection, including the timeline of how the community tried to purchase the pub, which I stand by as a fully factual account. So I'll address some of the points raised by the further information provided by the applicant, which we only saw this morning. The supposed offer of 245,000 July 2024 from Russell Stevens on behalf of the CBS. Russell Stevens never was, is or has been part of the CBS, as can be shown by our registration documents. This offer did not come from the CBS. My offer of 180,000 was a text message to the applicant's son, and the reply was that they won't be taking less than 300,000. Certainly wasn't glib, and it was a genuine offer. I can show you that message if required. Valuation by Pews. Whilst this was not arranged with the owner, it was arranged with the landlord at the time, and the valuer spent around an hour both inside and outside before he arrived at his valuation. On reflection, it was unwise on my part not to have gone through the freeholder. However, I fail to see why a professional auctioneer would arrive at an unrealistically low price. Furthermore, to the comfort of the freeholder, the landlord was on hand at the time and was able to speak to the auctioneer at length. Lack of investment. The applicant's recent letter states some of his investment in the pub. The majority of this was for a fire alarm, which would have been a statutory requirement and should have been in place many years before. A new carpet was fitted. As I understand it, the original carpet had been there for about 25 years, so was very much due for replacement. It stated that a brand new kitchen canopy was fitted. So I understand this was second-hand unit collected by a customer from Wolverhampton. This doesn't show significant investment in the pub, merely upkeep, which should have been ongoing all the time anyway. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you could return to your seats, please, in the public gallery. Yeah, just. I think we'll now have a resume of the legal position as far as if it was needed. Right.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to remind members that the updates that were sent to you are exempt information. So if you did want to discuss those at all, we need to go into closed session. So not to bring those up in the public domain. Thank you. The content of those documents.
Right, and now I'll ask for, I believe, Councillor Baker is the local member. He has, I hope, not 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't intend to go down that legal route, Ms Curry, so don't worry. Can I thank Mr Burge, Mr Haslam and Mr Lewis for their heartfelt comments. It always goes down well in front of the Planning Committee when people actually speak from the heart. There's no doubt that the Wheelwrights pub in Penkham, the number of objections to this application is quite impressive, quite frankly. Pubs, as we all know, are vital parts of rural communities, and the Wheelwrights is an important part, the fabric of Penkham village. We heard that a Community Benefits Society was set up and a sale price was agreed with the owners, but that they failed to progress the completion because the owner raised the already above inflation price by another 30%. The local valuation was 170,000 for this pub, and the owners, I think, have been asking for in excess of 250,000. So it's pretty obvious that no attempt has been made to market this building for sale as a pub, and the attitude of the owners is certainly not helpful. And increasing the asking price when a previous offer was accepted was unfortunate, to say the least. I don't intend to go on any further with points already raised, and I would ask the committee to vote with their hearts and refuse this application. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Hamlin and Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I must declare that I have a sort of slightly emotional interest in this one. About 40 years ago, it was my local pub for a period of about 10 years. And my wife and I at the time spent quite a lot of time, I should say, there, perhaps too much. Yeah. And knowing a lot of the local people, it was the beating heart of the village and had been so for many years. One of our friends, in fact, was born there when his parents were the landlord and landlady about 60 years ago. It is a pub with so many customers, it is viable. I totally disagree with its, anyone who says it's not a viable pub. It's the way it was run that was not viable. When it had an owner stroke landlord in place, it always made a decent living and would do so again. So I certainly cannot support this application.
Councillor Thomas and then Councillor Simmons.
Mr. Chairman, I can actually go back a bit farther than that. Young Farmers days, I was chairman of Allensmore Young Farmers, and we were very great friends with the Pencombe Young Farmers, so I did spend more hours in there than I should have done, possibly. But it's a pub with potential. I just think, you know, most of you know where I live, just off Harewood End. We have 7 pubs within 2 miles of where I live. Okay, so, yeah. All very successful, all making money, and there's a couple other pubs just outside the 2 miles. So having the nearest one is Cowan, I believe. I don't think that'll cause any. And I am absolutely, like most of hate to see licenses taken away from pubs. And I totally agree with the last speaker. It's not the pub, it's the landlord that either makes or breaks it. And so therefore I shall definitely be voting in favour of keeping the pub open.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I have to say that I have 14 licensed premises in my ward. Councillor Simmons, top that.
No, thank you, Chair. I won't try and top that one. I have to say, at the risk of being lynched by camera, I am not a frequent real ale drinker or pub dweller. I know, apologies. So I think I can speak independently on this one. What I do know is that community assets are absolutely vital to our rural areas. They do not have the facilities that are accessible to the city or even the market towns, and as has been eloquently explained in the letters of objection and again from the speakers today, there needs to be a place that people feel that they can coalesce around within a community. Looking at the officer's report and information that's been supplied to us separately, it is clear that the owners and applicants had purchased this as an investment opportunity, had left somebody else to run it. There is no reason to suspect that someone else couldn't come in and successfully run this. And I'm just only very sorry that the local community's offer to purchase this was not made. I would like to recommend that we refuse the change of use in line with the officer's recommendation.
All right. Councillor Stone, we've got Councillor Stone, perhaps we can then move to.
Thank you very
vote.
much, Chairman. There was mention from the one of the speakers about the village of Brimfield. We've been without a pub called the Roebuck since May 2023, and there has been some marketing, but unfortunately nobody has purchased it. Well, it has been purchased, but nothing has happened up to now, but it's ongoing. But just to remind the committee, last year 350 pubs around the country closed, a staggering number. Apparently there'll be even more this year. There was 350 in 2024. So it's a very serious issue, particularly in rural areas like the ones many of us represent. We really do miss these facilities. So I'm very sympathetic indeed to the local member who's spoken this morning and very much support what he said. The pubs are a vital hub in the community, brings people together. It's not just a question of going for a drink, it's pub quizzes, it's parties, it's all sorts of meetings up, which we greatly miss at the moment in Brimfield and in other villages as well. Pubs close for different reasons, but very often there isn't a proper marketing exercise, so any excuse is used to keep it closed and not to reopen. I'm all in favour of pubs reopening if we possibly can, and supporting these vital parts of the local community. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And now, can I have a formal, seconder? takes your choice.
He had his hand up first.
I must say we're kicking at an open goal, I think is the analogy. Right. Local member, do you wish to say anything more?
Nothing further, Chairman.
For that much, thanks. We'll move now to the vote. Can I ask for those in favour as the recommendation as outlined in the agenda, please indicate. That is carried unanimously. Then thank you all for your attendance. And is the live stream closed, please?